Max Talent Player. Chapter 21. Mandra 2. Sponsored content. The great explorer, Jackson, was known to have cleared the Soul Station dungeon at least 300 times. He said this about the dungeon. In Latin, Mandra means stable. Jackson interpreted the name, Mandra, as stable or barn, and was said to have tried various answers based on his interpretation. Finally, I found the correct clearing method for the Soul Station dungeon. Simply saying your name would give you so rewards, exactly the right kind of items for a beginner dungeon. Of course, they weren't bad. However, they didn't quite deserve to be called a hidden piece. My name is. Jackson's strategy guide was like a rulebook for beginners, and I had memorized it from cover to end. He had said it like this. The correct answer is Rancher. Your master, the one who has granted you new life. I am Rancher. The Mandra statue began to shake. Finding my response curious, Seo Juwon and So Yuhyun were unable to tear their eyes away from me. The statue had asked me for my name, but I had answered in English as Rancher. The great explorer Jackson's strategy was indeed correct. Greetings to my master. I heard a notice. You have found the correct answer. You have fulfilled the hidden piece. Notices from guardians flooded in at the same time. The nameless observer tilts their head. The lady of the scales is surprised. The whispering devil is feeling great interest. Yes, that was only natural. I could guess that the guardians were getting just as heated as I was. They viewed playing as their one and only amusement and stimulant. For them, I would become an incredible stimulant. I was aware of that fact, and would use it properly to my advantage. Golden light began to emerge from Mandra's body. Master, please select one. A hologram appeared before my eyes, visible only to me. There were 3 choices listed on it. Choose a reward. Mandra's cuirass, Mandra's greatsword, Mandra's gloves. I already knew these choices would appear. In the meantime, Seo Juwon asked, it seems you've been given something special. We should wait, right? I would be grateful if you would wait a moment. I think 1 minute will suffice. While I had been distracted, Eye of Perception had picked up something nasty. Seo Juwon's lecherous gaze had repeatedly landed on Sunhwa. He wouldn't actually do anything, but that disgusting gaze was unpleasant. However, I didn't show my disgust outwardly. After all, nothing good would come from revealing to the world that I could read someone's emotions, disposition, and special traits. I picked a reward without hesitation. I'll take the gloves. Mandra nodded. Understood. I offer you my gloves. I hope these gloves become a gift that help forge your path forward. I already knew the effects, but I still checked the gloves. Mandra's gloves. Mandra's gloves have a special effect. They have a special resistance to poison, and will protect the wearer from countless infectious diseases. Defense. 2. Effects. Poison resistance +3. The notices came in. You have passed Mandra's test. The Plaza of Mandra has been cleared. The next scenario quest, 2 forked paths, will proceed. A quest was issued. 2 forked paths. The final crossroad of the Soul Station dungeon. Find the appropriate clear conditions to complete the Soul Station dungeon. If you cannot clear the dungeon, a dungeon break will occur. At least 1 player must enter each passage. Not far in the distance, I saw 2 forked pathways. The Soul Station dungeon was a dungeon that had a fundamentally forked structure. The difficulty of both paths were about the same. Seo Juwon was the first to speak. I analyzed the best way to proceed, and I could feel a repulsive nastiness coming from him via Eye of Perception. His obscene gaze towards Sunhwa was extremely unpleasant. As you all know, I am the type of DPS who moves quickly to strike weak points. It's a class that can perform very well in combination with a reliable tank, like Miss Sunhwa. Juwon continued, I think that it would be good to form a team with me, Sunhwa, and 2 people from my group. The other pathway can be handled by Yuhyun Nim, Hyukjin Nim, and the other person from my group. The balance should be right that way. Tien. Nim is a formal honorific to express respect. On the outside, he made it seem like he was paying heed to balance. However, I had no intention of letting Sunhwa go. At least, not to a sickening bastard with a summary of violent pedophile. No, I responded flatly. Seo Juwon didn't look all that surprised. Please tell me why. Sunhwa is like a little sister to me. In fact, my mother is considering adopting her. I will act with Sunhwa. I was curious as to how Seo Juwon, a lieutenant of the Demon King Army, the first new from the past, would respond. Even though I conceded the item to you with good grace, won't it be bad from an efficiency standpoint? Efficiency? From the start, I was planning on clearing this dungeon with just me and Sunhwa. And you think it's possible with just the two of you? Even the intermediate administrators recommended 7 players. Think carefully. His eyes weren't good-natured anymore. It couldn't quite be called openly rude, but there was no real goodwill to be found, either. The look in his eyes had changed from before. If I had thought it impossible, I wouldn't have come in. You sure have a great deal of confidence. I could feel Ju Wan's emotions. Whenever someone felt intense emotions, eye of perception picked it up without fail. If I were to put it into words, he was cursing me as a irritating son of a bitch right now. It seems you have met a guardian who is providing you a lot of information and benefits. Well, something like that. I didn't get a scrap of information from the guardians, but it was a decent reason to convince Seo Juwon, who promptly grinned. If you have received information from a guardian, that must effectively mean that Miss Sunhwa and Hyukjin Nim are capable of clearing this dungeon with the two of you, correct? It was effectively correct. Sunhwa and I could clear this dungeon on our own. I saw Ju Wan's eyes sparkle, and I knew the reason why. You think you and I are on the same level? He probably thought so. I had hidden my skills in order to make him think that. That's why you'll probably assume that if I can clear it, you can clear it too. It wasn't strange that he would misunderstand. From the start, I had saved my strength in order to make him think that. I wanted to see just how he would react now. Then, how would you like to proceed, senior? Since you were planning on clearing the dungeon with Sunhwa as a pair. Will just the two of you go into one pathway? He asked. He continued a moment later, but if you do that, we'll be too unbalanced, so. Let's do it like this, instead. How about our group moving as one unit and Yoo-hyun Nim going to the other side? He gave a cunning smile. I checked his disposition again with eye of perception, clearly seeing one word on the list. Disposition. Fake. Perhaps noticing that the mood had turned a little strange, so Yoo-hyun intervened. That sounds good. I will move to the other party. And so, the parties were divvied up, me, Sunhwa, and Yoo-hyun in one team, Ju-won and the 3 players he led in the other. Their side only had damage dealers. Seo Ju-won headed to the right forked pathway first. Well then, I wish you the best of luck. Reaper scans. Translator, Lei. Proofreader, Ash. Join our Discord for updates on releases. https://discord.gg/maragmfhrb. I went into the left fork. As soon as we separated from Ju Wan's group, so Yoo-hyun spoke up. You seemed very unhappy. From Yoo-hyun's point of view, it was probably strange that I blatantly made things difficult for Seo Ju-won. I had never really shown him any goodwill, even though he hadn't shown any reason to deserve such cold treatment. Yes, I don't really like that kind of person. I decided not to say too much. I wouldn't say that the man would become a named player of an organization called Nightmare in the future, or that his current dominant disposition was fake, or that his summary was pedophile. Nor would I tell him that he hadn't noticed, but that bastard had been looking at Sunhwa with a dirty gaze. There was no need to say those things, and I had no reason to convince him of anything. Notices came in. You have entered the first forked path. Please reach the end of the path. There will be a clue to the clear at the end of the path. The notices aside, Yoo-hyun easily accepted my half-assed explanation of, I just don't like him. That's fair. And then, he suddenly reached out and grabbed my hand. I almost shook him off by instinct. I didn't have a perverted disposition like Seo Ju-won, and I didn't swing that way either. Simply put, a man's hand? No thanks. I very nearly attacked him. You are the person who saved me, correct? I am sure I saw you in the D Tower's second floor. The 2 heroes who left with the magic troll. He seemed to be remembering things a little strangely. It wasn't that we left with the magic troll. We had fled for our lives from the magic troll. All of my teammates died there, but I survived. I owe you my life. Oh, so, is that how it was? You are my hero. Please give me a chance to repay you. I'm very good at repaying favors. I had no idea how to respond. I desperately wanted to tear my hand away, but it was a little tricky to do so with those big, glistening eyes shining at me. This was the reason why I couldn't really shake off his hand. State, goodwill, respect, adoration, gratitude. I didn't go out of my way to activate eye of perception, but I could very clearly feel what kinds of emotions this person had towards me. So Yoo-hyun was being completely sincere. Sincerity was overflowing from every pore of his body. If it is all right with you, may I call you Hee-young-nim? Tien. Hee-young-nim is a respectful form of hung, used by a male to refer to an older male. But we're the same age? That doesn't matter, does it? You are my life's savior. I scratched my head. This thing called eye of perception was really nice and all, but it was pointlessly sensitive and forced me to understand a person's inner feelings far too well. So Yoo-hyun's sincerity was relayed to me loud and clear through eye of perception. Was this guy always so simple and honest? Well, do as you please. Please speak casually to me, Hee-young-nim. Sunhwa smiled, as if finding the situation very amusing. But you know, Hyukjin Oppa is Oppa. And Yoo-hyun Mr. is a Mr. So if Mr.'s hung is Oppa, then what should I call you? After contemplating on her lonesome, Sunhwa also came to a conclusion on her own, and very quickly. Mr. is still Mr. And Oppa is Oppa. That settles it. Yoo-hyun's brow wrinkled a little at being called a Mr., but he didn't show his feelings openly. But, it feels like you are staying here on purpose. Am I correct? This man, so Yoo-hyun, was pretty quick on the uptake. You are correct. Come now, Hee-young-nim. Like I said, please speak casually. I nodded. Fine. Okay, it shouldn't be a bad thing to have the future Fist King as my little brother. It wasn't like I forced him or anything. This was what he wanted, so there wasn't any reason to refuse, was there? Yeah, I repeated, more casually this time. Why, is there some genuine secret I don't know about? You'll find out if we wait here a little. Yoo-hyun didn't question me, and neither did Sunhwa. Waiting at the safe zone without leaving was a strange thing to do, but the two of them waited patiently. After about 10 minutes, we heard a notice. A new player is entering. The safe zone will be deactivated, as the limit of 5 players has been exceeded. There was only one reason why I had waited without expending my stamina. It was because I predicted that the others would enter our path, though I hoped my prediction wouldn't come true. Did they already clear the other path, Hee-young-nim? I knew Seo Ju-won would come here. I also knew he would stab me in the back. I knew he had a summary of violent pedophile, and that his disgusting gaze had been straying towards Sunhwa. And I knew one last thing. That the current Seo Ju-won was no match for me. Chapter 22. Second innate ability. Sponsored content. I stared at Seo Ju-won and his group of 3, numbering 4 in total. He said to me, "You don't seem all that surprised?" His way of speech had suddenly become very casual. I, of course, responded in the same manner. I had a vague idea of what you would do, though I didn't think you'd really go for it. Really? He smirked. Then we can cut the useless chatter. He took out his weapon, the dagger. He had come here determined. There's no video surveillance here and no police to protect you, as I'm sure you're well aware. Of course I was. There were tons of cases where people went into dungeons and their bodies could not even be found. Murders occurred frequently within. Later on, the Players' Association would be established and there would be implicit promises and rules between players, but that was a thing of the future. Your reason for doing this? I just find you really annoying. You're real irritating, see? Seo Ju-won stared at me in distaste before adding one more thing. But if you give me that girl, I'll let you go this time. Seo Ju-won turned to Yoo-hyun and offered him the proposal as well. How about it, Yoo-hyun? All you have to do is give me that girl and this situation can be settled nice and neatly. Sunhwa clutched the hem of my clothes. I could feel how small her hand was, just how small a 14-year-old girl just barely out of elementary school was. I just don't understand why you're asking for Sunhwa, I said. Actually, I knew the truth. His summary had laid his nature bare. Summary. Violent pedophile. In other words, he was a psychopath. I stared at the man. Right now, the Seo Ju-won in my eyes didn't look that strong. You said it. There are no surveillance cameras here. That also applies to you, you psychopath. He snickered. What? You can't be thinking of fighting us, right? I'm sure Yoo-hyun will be neutral. You think you and that tiny little girl will be a match for us four? I was so dumbfounded I had to laugh. What in the world had him so confident that Yoo-hyun would be neutral? Yoo-hyun also clarified, but I'm on Hee-young-nim's side, he said, his raised fists making him seem like a cow determined to butt heads with Seo Ju-won. That didn't seem to faze our opponent much. Well, whatever. I've already seen the full extent of your skills. His eyes grew serious. I'll give you one last chance. Eye of perception relayed an electrifying sensation to me. It was as if a sharp blade were pricking my body. I had learned this feeling through eye of perception. Murderous intent. It was his bloodthirst, his desire to kill someone. That man was serious right now. He spoke, as if giving a final warning. We're about tied when it comes to hunting monsters. But knowing what he was about to say, I cut in. Have an ability specialized for PvP. Ju-won was briefly taken aback, having had the words taken from his mouth. However, he quickly recovered his relaxed air. You're well informed. I smiled. Have you learned Shadow Ambush, at least? He probably hadn't yet. He hadn't even advanced to a class. From his reaction, I could tell he hadn't learned any techniques like shadow ambush. If so, I wasn't all that worried. Let me ask you one more time. Feel free. If I don't give you Sunhwa, you really intend on killing us? Seo Juwon grinned. I told you already, there's no surveillance here, this is really your last chance. Decide, whether you'll all die, or just give that girl to me. Because there were no police here, no laws. Because this was a dungeon. That's right, that's the sort of place this is. I hadn't forgotten. I hadn't experienced it before in the past, but the dungeons during the beginning period were all lawless zones. How about it? Decided in your heart? My answer to you is this. I shot towards Seo Juwon first, bending slightly for a takedown tackle. Heel dodge. I could see his movements as clearly as day. His trajectory, and how he would move, they were all drawn out in my head. You crazy bastard. The long-range DPS knocked an arrow at me, an action that was not lost on me. My eye of perception that had absorbed sixth sense completely read his movements. Slow. From the beginning, Juwon wasn't my objective. My target was the irritating long-range DPS, Go Jangan. I hoped I wouldn't have to use it, but I twisted in place and used the thing I had prepared in Jangan's direction. Reaper scans. Translator, Lei. Proofreader, Ash. Join our Discord for updates on releases. https://discord.gg/maragmfhrb. So Yoo-hyun was instantly stunned. Huh? It was already surprising that Kim Hyukjin had predicted all of this, but more surprising was that his movements were completely different from before. He was hiding his full strength? That was the only explanation. Hyukjin's movements were incredibly clean. Yoo-hyun had always been well versed in various martial arts, and in his eyes, Hyukjin's movements just now looked like they had come from a long-time wrestler. He purposely didn't show all of his strength, Yoo-hyun realized. Hyukjin had done so exactly for a situation like this. That one movement just now had proven it without a trace of doubt. Yoo-hyun also steeled himself to fight. It was all or nothing. You assholes. He started running towards one player. Just then, Kang Sunhwa jumped in. Using the skill Platinum Shield. Clang! A loud clang echoed out. Sunhwa had blocked Juwon's dagger attack, protecting Yoo-hyun. Thanks. This child who was only 14, a kid whose talent plates hadn't even fully opened up yet, had read the attack of a man specialized in surprise attacks. Using the skill Power Fist. White light gathered in Yoo-hyun's fist. He landed his fist squarely in the abdomen of a player. Goo! The player curled like a shrimp. At the same time, Kim Hyukjin approached and scattered something sweet-smelling. Hyukjin was sure of it. We can beat them. The other side had underestimated them too much. No, we will beat them. Yoo-hyun moved far better and faster than he expected. Sunhwa's sense for combat was second to none. She was completely different from the scared and cowering girl she had been moments before. The moment the battle started, Sunhwa completely changed. Sunhwa blocked a whopping 3 of Seo Juwon's rather tricky attacks. Even though she was breathing hard and trembling because she had used Platinum Shield many times in succession. Hyukjin poured honey water over Seo Juwon, like he had already done with Go Jangan. That was the honey his sister had bought for him. He had diluted it into honey water. The fuck are you doing? Seo Juwon had the feeling that things were not going as planned. Both Yoo-hyun and Sunhwa were far stronger than he expected. He thought they'd be able to overwhelm the three of them, but his group was the one getting overwhelmed. No, the problem isn't Yoo-hyun or Sunhwa. It wasn't them. The person completely responsible for this situation was Kim Hyukjin. His movements were difficult to chase. As if he were using some kind of special footwork, Hyukjin attacked them while nimbly dodging. Just how fucking high is his agility? Juwon had invested a ton of his points into agility, but Hyukjin was still faster. The rat weaved in and out, breaking their center of gravity. There were also Yoo-hyun's powerful blows to contend with, and Sunhwa blocked their occasional attacks. Fuck. That bastard. He had to catch that bastard. As long as they could do something about Hyukjin, everything would work out. He thought Yoo-hyun would be the biggest problem, but it was actually Hyukjin. Juwon's entire body felt sticky. His hair and clothes were a mess of sweat and honey water. Is he trying to rile us up? Hyukjin could have easily gone for a fatal blow, but he didn't use any weapons and simply poured honey water on them. Boom. Boom. He started to hear loud booms coming from deeper along the pathway. Get down. At my shout, Yoo-hyun and Sunhwa immediately ducked. When we first came in here, I had told them in advance. On the off chance that something happens, if I tell you to get down no matter what's going on. Got it? Both Yoo-hyun and Sunhwa got down immediately, as did I. A swarm of bees rushed past our heads. They were far bigger than regular bees, even bigger than the Asian giant hornets that were frequently called the scariest bees. The attack of the buzzing bees has begun. Buzzing B-18 Latvian laches. Their individual levels weren't that high, but there were thousands of them in a swarm. Without a fire mage, it was better to not even consider trying to kill them. What the fuck? The screams began. Buzzing bees were very sensitive to sweet smells. Uog. Save me. Please save me. And they had a habit of drinking players' blood. I beg you. Save. No. Covered from head to toe in thousands of buzzing bees, the screams of the 4 players sticky with honey water became quieter and quieter. The attack of the buzzing bees has ended. Hundreds of buzzing bees that had become bloated from drinking too much blood had fallen to the ground, along with 4 players who had become as desiccated as mummies. It's over. Eye of perception couldn't sense anything from them anymore. There was no trace of life. Now, they could no longer be considered living. They died. Technically, I was the one who killed them. I don't feel as much as I thought I would. I was more emotionless than I expected. Even though I had just committed murder, I didn't feel much guilt or pangs of conscience, nor was I nauseated or scared by the sight of those mummified bodies. I was so calm I was a little scared of myself. I cast one last glance at Seo Juwon, whose body had become mummified. You brought this on yourself. If you were resolved to kill someone, you had to be resolved to meet your own death. The bodies were sucked dry of their blood. The buzzing bees scattered on the ground, round as balloons with blood. I had created this situation, almost like a conductor directing an orchestra. The reactions of the guardians were mixed. The Lady of the Scales is greatly disappointed in you. The nameless observer is silent. The whispering devil claps his hands in glee. Standing behind me, Yoo-hyun and Sunhwa held their silence for a moment. After all, what had just happened before them was not something they had seen in their everyday life. The calmest person here wasn't the future Fist King Seo Yoo-hyun, but actually me, Kim Hyukjin. The same Kim Hyukjin who had received a no talent evaluation. I heard some notices. A special situation has been exposed. The system has recognized the situation as a PK, player kill. Forcibly awakening your dormant innate ability due to your first PK. I had already heard a notice like this before. Back when we were running from the magic troll, there was a notice like this. That was when I awakened my innate ability, Sixth Sense, and that Sixth Sense had been fused into the Eye of Perception I currently possessed. I had another innate ability? Most players only got one innate ability, and it was orthodox for it to unlock at around level 60. Fast players would get it at around level 40, but I already had 2 of them. Awakening your innate ability. Huh? And to my surprise, that innate ability was one I was already very familiar with. Chapter 23. Second innate ability, 2. Sponsored content. There were more notices. The innate ability, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, has been awakened. Check the innate ability? Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, was among the relatively common innate abilities. However, there was a class player who had won her fame with this ability as a foundation. Sword Empress Shin Yunseo. The Sword Empress never revealed the name of her innate ability exactly as eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Hers was probably an innate ability of a higher grade. The innate ability of the Sword Empress 10 years later was thought to be Hammurabi. Of course, that was just a guess. It wasn't confirmed by the Sword Empress herself. In any case, they're the same in essence. There's a high chance this is the ability the Sword Empress started with. The Sword Empress raiding capabilities were very outstanding, but her PvPing ability was even better than that. There were rumors on the internet that the Fist King Seo Yoo-hyun and the Flame Lord Choi Sung-ji-yu had lost in 1-to-1 PvP to the Sword Empress. I think she had a tie with the Typhoon, Jo Sung-hyun, right? It was said that the Sword Empress had the higher skills, but Jo Sung-hyun had the advantage in playstyle. The people in question didn't state it outright, but it was something known by most people who had an interest in playing, or civil service students studying for the civil servant exam that had new questions every iteration based on the history the current figures wrote. Status window. Name, Kim Hyukjin, player. Level, 18. Title, First Pioneer, Excellent Player. Innate ability, Eye of Perception, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Strength, 17. Intelligence, 17. Agility, 23. Perception, 17. Constitution, 17. Willpower, 17, plus 30. Bonus stats, 6. Sponsored content. Random stats, 3. Undistributed stats, 9. I clicked the innate ability. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It's only right to return what is dealt to you, even more so if it's revenge. This innate ability triggers when you are dealt a preemptive attack by a player. However, if you remain passive after receiving a preemptive attack, all buffs will take effect as debuffs. 1. Attack power plus 7%. 2. Attack speed plus 7%. 3. Critical chance plus 7%. 4. MP consumption minus 7%. If you remain passive after receiving a preemptive attack, points 1 to 3 will become minus 7% and point 4 will become plus 7%. Sponsored content. A low chance of having a seizure if you remain passive after receiving a preemptive attack. You'll become even stronger against a player who attacks you first. Considering this was still the early stage, this ability was almost a cheat. Is it okay for someone to get something like this in the early stage? This meant there was a far higher possibility for its growth. Things like titles were also easier to upgrade the sooner they were given. With that in mind, I really wasn't sure if it was okay for me to get something like this in the Soul Station dungeon, a mere beginner dungeon and essentially the first dungeon outside of the tutorial. But wait, actually, innate abilities are kind of like a talent my body was originally born with. The only issue was whether you could awaken them or not. In other words, these two innate abilities were abilities I always had within me. Just then, another notice interrupted my thoughts. The intermediate administrator, Senia, has requested a chat. Will you accept? Y.N. However, it wasn't a simple chat. A pause has taken effect due to the intermediate administrator, Senia. Senia reached out first and requested a chat with Kim Hyukjin. She was so curious that she really couldn't hold back. To be more precise, it was the Guardians who were curious, especially the Lady of the Scales who had expressed great disappointment in Hyukjin. A pause has taken effect. Nobody else here can hear this conversation. Player Kim Hyukjin, this is a conversation between the two of us. Senia said it like it was just a chat between the two of them, but Hyukjin already knew. The Guardians must be listening, too. It wasn't a chat between him and Senia. If it was, they would be talking with an actual whisper. In other words, this conversation right now was a player video being shown to the Guardians. Hyukjin had picked up on that quickly, unbeknownst to Senia. Sponsored content. She said, there was a flash of light just now. What was it? Hyukjin looked around. Everything had become black and white. The world was on pause. I'm surprised she went for a pause. It was rare for an intermediate administrator to independently come out and use their pause authority during a dungeon play. In most cases, that meant some guardian, one with quite a lot of financial power, had requested a pause. If a guardian stepped in, that meant the guardians were going crazy with curiosity. There was a flash of light like I got something, after all. It wasn't time for a level up yet, so there was no reason for there to be a flash of light. I was well aware of that. They're probably making a fuss at her to find out what it is. After all, these damned guardians were completely unable to resist their curiosity. I could see it in my head. Right now, I was merely a thing of amusement for the guardians as a player, but actually, I was the one who could make them antsy. If I played my cards right in the future, I could even lead the guardians by the nose. It wasn't possible right at this instant, but I could already see that possibility. I got an emergency quest. As an intermediate administrator, Senia was aware that Hyukjin's words were a lie. At the very least, information related to quests were shared to intermediate administrators. If I were to summarize the quest, kill those who are trying to kill me. Only, I couldn't kill them directly. Senia didn't say anything, maintaining her usual expressionless face. She simply listened. A definite lie. What is this player thinking? Hyukjin was an incomprehensible player who couldn't be predicted at all. Even Senia was curious about what words would come from the mouth of this strange player who was only level 18. Does he know that these words are being relayed to the Guardians? They were in a pause state right now. She hadn't told him that the Guardians were listening in, but could it be that he knew? Please continue, Senia said. Reaper scans. Translator, Lei. Proofreader, Ash. Sponsored content. Join our Discord for updates on releases. https://discord.gg/maragmfhrb If I were to summarize the quest, kill those who are trying to kill me. Only, I couldn't kill them directly. The reason why I said this was because I was conscious of the Lady of the Scales listening in. I'd heard earlier that the Lady of the Scales was greatly disappointed. I killed someone, so she probably wasn't happy about that. To say it in extremes, the Lady of the Scales was a guardian with a very moral fag personality. It wasn't strange that she was disappointed in me, since regardless of the situation as a whole, I did end up killing them. This was why absolute good types were exhausting to deal with. That yellow light was the indicator for getting the quest reward. I stilled for a moment, examining Senya's expression. What were the guardians saying? But Senya was as expressionless as ever, and I wasn't able to glean any hints from her expression. As the quest reward, I got an innate ability awakening. I decided to tell the truth on this. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It's an innate ability where I must attack back if someone attacks me first or directs ill will towards me. If I don't do anything after getting hit, I'll have a seizure as a side effect. If you want, you can scan it. This much explanation was probably enough to appease the Lady of the Scales a little, too. I was simply following the rules of the system. A player is in existence bound to scenarios and quests. That was, in effect, an absolute law. It's about time for the Lady of the Scales to bite. This time, I received a real whisper, a voice only I could hear. Even the guardians couldn't hear it. Why did you lie? Is the reason important? Lies can lead to later problems. This streamer still had a long way to go. I could tell she was a beginner simply from the way she blatantly whispered to me. Your objective is getting coins, and mine is living a good life. If we can help each other in achieving those goals, there shouldn't be any reason to butt heads. Did you really get that ability? It was true that I got an innate ability called, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Senya continued talking to me in a businesslike tone. Sponsored content. Your lie cannot be exposed, not even by mistake. The guardians are sensitive to lies. They can even give the command to kill you for fabricating the quest. How very cute. I grinned, but only inwardly. I couldn't show the guardians my expression. What's higher, the chance of you making a mistake, or of me making a mistake? The fact she had aided and abetted my lie meant we were in the same boat. You overlooked my lie. One misstep, and you'll also become a target for the guardians. After all, they can't tolerate being deceived by lower beings. It was a relief she wasn't glib-tongued or talkative. She didn't talk much, so there should be less of a chance for her to slip up. It's actually better than being talkative. Her talent as a streamer was at the bottom of the barrel, but it didn't matter. She could still survive if she had quality content that could cover for her lack of talent, and then some. I said a few more things aloud. If a whisper went on for too long, the guardians would definitely think something was up, though this blockheaded streamer didn't even know that. I don't feel good about it, I said, making a dark expression. I was also an ordinary person until very recently, and leading someone to their death like this is scary and terrifying. I feel that way, even now. Lady of the Scales, are you listening? I didn't want to have to say this much, but I had no choice. But I'm even more fearful of someone precious to me getting hurt. I would rather become a murderer than let something terrible happen to a child who sacrificed her life for me. This was the final nail in the coffin. Because that is what I consider to be the greatest justice I can carry out. Sponsored content. I finally heard a notice. The Lady of the Scales' misunderstanding has been resolved. The Lady of the Scales acknowledges the absolute law. The Lady of the Scales understands your true heart. The lovely notices continued. The Lady of the Scales has gifted you 300 coins. The Lady of the Scales is seriously considering bestowing a large gift. The Lady of the Scales decides to postpone the large gift. The result fell a little short of the mark. If possible, I would have liked to make her feel a bit sorrier and direct the play a bit more dramatically so that she wouldn't just consider, but actually, bestow. Well, in any case, I've acquired the possibility of getting a large gift from her. You couldn't expect too much with the first swing. The pause will end soon. Shortly afterwards, the pause ended. So Yuhyun was a future ranker. He was someone who would rise to the position of Fist King, even without my help or meddling. Naturally, he was a player of overwhelming talent, and so I thought he would quickly become accustomed to death. I would have done the same. Even death was too good for them. Youngnim, don't be too torn up about them for no reason. I expected this response from him. However, Sunhwa's reaction was unexpected. She was unexpectedly extremely calm, and was unmoved by the indirect murder I had committed. It was really scary, but those were bad people. She didn't go so far as to say, good riddance. but it didn't look like Sunhwa was all that fazed by their deaths. The phrase, influence of talent, was a very famous set of words that described why someone could adapt so quickly in a situation like this. Come to think of it, the person most unfeeling about this situation is me. I had just essentially killed Seo Juwon's group with my own hands, but despite that, I suffered absolutely zero mental shock. On the contrary, I was calm enough to use the situation to soothe the Lady of the Scales and paint the situation I wanted. It was enough to make me wonder if I was a psychopath. Though they were trash who deserved to die. In any case, it was surprising to me that I could be so aloof to someone's death. I trust you, Oppa. I picked up on an intense emotion via eye of perception. State, trust, reliance, respect. Under my direction, Yoo-hyun and Sunhwa hunted the buzzing bees, littered on the ground with reddened bodies and bulging bellies. You couldn't even really call it hunting. You just had to nudge them and they would explode with a pop. It was a side effect of having sucked too much human blood. We didn't get any notable items. Acquired buzzing bee stinger. Acquired buzzing bee stinger. The most we got were buzzing bee stingers. The monsters also didn't give much express. We hunted all of the buzzing bees we could see. The time had come to advance. Let's go. At the end of this path was a crystal that would allow us to clear the Soul Station dungeon. There was one in this path, and one in the path that Juwon had gone to. Once we got both, we could achieve what I wanted. We continued forward, hunting the black yaks and purple yaks along the path. Acquired black yaks lean meat. Acquired black yaks lean meat. Yoo-hyun and Sunhwa showed a fairly impressive play. Oppa, over there. I saw a crystal exuding purple light floating in the air, around 30 centimeters in size. Just then, a notice came in. The Soul Station crystal does not welcome intruders. An ominous purple energy began to spread from the crystal like a fog. Eye of perception detects danger. It was a vicious poisonous gas. Chapter 24, Korean Father. Sponsored content. Eye of perception detects danger. It was definitely not a meaningless warning. It's dangerous to approach without any sort of defenses. In the initial stage of the Soul Station dungeon, countless players lost their lives to that poisonous gas, not knowing the method to counter it. Oppa. Despite having become accustomed to goblins and relatively normal monsters like city wolves, it seemed Sunhwa still hadn't gotten used to these kinds of special effects. I'm scared, she murmured, standing behind me. Yoo-hyun didn't show it, but he also looked tense. Both of you, stay back. The speed of the diffusion itself wasn't fast. It was fine as long as you didn't breathe it in. We were still okay, since we were far away. What about you, Oppa? I have to get rid of that. Sunhwa's eyes were round with worry. It'll be fine, don't worry. It wasn't like I didn't feel any nerves. Even though I knew the strategy from beginning to end, even though I knew how to get rid of that poisonous gas, I would still die if I messed up. I strode towards the crystal. Around here, I guess. I drew in a big breath. Having become a player, I could now hold my breath far longer than a regular person. My eyes were fixed on the crystal exuding the poisonous smoke. Here I go. I inspected the item one last time, the hidden piece item I got from Mandra. Mandra's gloves. Mandra's gloves have a special effect. They have a special resistance to poison, and will protect the wearer from countless infectious diseases. Defense. 2. Effects. Poison resistance +3. A poison resistance of +3 couldn't block all poisons. The closer I got to the crystal, the more my skin began to sting. Resisting the poisonous smoke of the Soul Station crystal. Eye of perception detects danger. Sponsored content. I sensed the danger slightly more concretely through eye of perception. If I kept going forward like this, I would get poisoned and die. After some time, my skin would rot and fester. Poison resistance +3 alone wasn't enough to completely resist this crystal's poisonous smoke. And this was something I already knew. I continued to approach the crystal, holding my breath as best I could. Senya must know. She had to know that I, someone who didn't have full poison resistance, wouldn't be unscathed from approaching the crystal simply on the merit of the Mandra's gloves. And the Guardians must be focusing, too. Senya and the Guardians, both of them were likely focusing on my playing. They wanted to see if a mere level 18 player could truly clear this place on his own. For Guardians with names like Whispering Devil, they might even want to see me die a miserable death. I'll show you. The playing you guys want. Inventory. I opened up my inventory, then pulled out an item. It was the item we had acquired earlier, Buzzing Bee's Stinger. It was a monster that gave little EXP and not many coins. Despite that, we worked hard to hunt them, not missing out on a single one. The crystal's poison has begun to seep into your body. Resisting the poison. It's hard to keep my eyes open. Thanks to my stats being far higher than the regular player, my poison resistance was likely higher than the average player. I'm also at my limit for holding my breath. I had reached the crystal, but the poisonous smoke was so thick I could hardly see in front of myself. Actually, I really couldn't see anything. The smoke was just too thick. Where is it? Eye of Perception detects very severe danger. Eye of Perception did me the useless favor of drawing out the future in great detail. If time went on like this, I would die. Goo. I tried my best to hold my breath, but it wasn't perfect. I felt the poison seeping up into my nostrils, and the feeling of my skin burning. Potions cannot be used. I already knew that. Where is it? I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. Intense pain began to hit me. Despite the pain, I desperately groped for the crystal. Here. In the end, Eye of Perception didn't fail me. I was able to grab the crystal. Quick. The very same instant I got the crystal, I crushed the Buzzing Bee's Stinger in my hand. A black fluid burst out of the needle-like stinger. Quite a lot of fluid flowed out from such a small stinger and fell onto the crystal. Sponsored content. Seize. Smoke rose from the crystal. The toxicity of the Soul Station crystal is being neutralized. The toxicity of the Soul Station crystal is being neutralized. I crushed more Buzzing Bee stingers and smeared their fluid on the crystal. Every time I did so, smoke billowed up and I got notices saying the toxicity of the Soul Station crystal was being weakened. I heard Sunhwa's voice, saying one honest and simple word. Holy. The purple smoke thinned, little by little. Goo, goo. I stared at my arm. It had turned purple and looked fairly poisoned. It wasn't as easy as I thought. My physical sight had been rendered nearly completely unusable. As a result, I wasn't able to find the crystal right away. In any case, I did it. It wasn't perfect, but I achieved it nevertheless. At just level 18, I managed to destroy the crystal of the Soul Station dungeon, something that had produced countless victims in the past. Acquired the Soul Station crystal. You have fulfilled one half of the clear conditions. Before I knew it, the smoke had completely disappeared. The nameless observer observes you with deep interest. The Whispering Devil is disappointed. The Whispering Devil definitely wanted to see me die from poison, it seemed. Yuhyun approached me. Hyungnim, how did you do it? I couldn't see very well because of the smoke. We got the Buzzing Bee stingers earlier, remember? I neutralized the poison smoke with that. How did you know you could neutralize the smoke with that? The item description says it neutralizes poison. There was no need to twist myself in knots to explain. The Guardians were watching, and I didn't need to boast about my playing. Then did you think of this play after seeing just that one description? Yeah. It wasn't something I'd thought of. It was the great explorer, the mighty Jackson. Yuhyun was silent. State, respect, interest, surprise. Somehow, it felt like his state was becoming similar to Sunhwa's, but that wasn't important. I acquired the crystal. After doing it once, it would be a little easier to get the other crystal. Let's go. Reaper scans. Translator, Lei. Proofreader, Ash. Join our Discord for updates on releases. https://discord.gg/maragmfhrb. The party went into the path that Seo Juwon had gone into first. Their way through was almost the same, and so was the difficulty. They then reached the vicinity of the crystal and heard the notice once again. The Soul Station crystal does not welcome intruders. It was a repetition of the same trick. To some extent, the Soul Station dungeon was a beginner dungeon and didn't have a complicated or difficult clearing method. As long as you knew the strategy, it had a very high clearing chance and the death chance was also very low. Eye of Perception detects danger. Like before, Eye of Perception sent Hyukjin warning signals. However, Hyukjin was able to acquire the crystal with slightly more ease than before. Senia streamed Hyukjin's play in silence. He has already grown. The way he nullified the Soul Station crystal's poisonous smoke earlier was already surprising. But after doing it just once, his movements were much more natural than before. Earlier, he was definitely in a really dangerous spot. The poisonous smoke was so thick that he wasn't able to find the crystal properly. If he didn't have Eye of Perception, Kim Hyukjin might have even died in the first fork pathway. But this time, last time, his arm had gone purple, But this time, there wasn't a trace of purple anywhere, meaning he hadn't taken any damage from the poisonous gas. The nameless observer is in awe of the speed of your growth. The Lady of the Scales is surprised by your growth. The courageous Lion King has begun to take an interest again in your talent. The Guardians were also in awe of Hyukjin's current speed of growth. They were watching his playing from a third-person view. They could make far more objective estimates of his playing. Player Kim Hyukjin, are you conscious of what kind of playing you are doing right now? What in the world was this player? Her common sense could not make sense of it. There wasn't even any need for her to make any commentary. Even at this very moment, prominent Guardians were entering her channel, simply based on the fact that she had good quality content. Anonymous Guardians are entering channel number 19,207 in great numbers. Not just rabble, but yet another Guardian who revealed their true name entered her channel. The true master of the heavenly demonic mountain has entered channel number 19,207. Senia simply continued to stream Hyukjin's playing, watching in silence as Hyukjin obtained the crystal. Acquired the Soul Station crystal. You have fulfilled the clear conditions for the Soul Station dungeon. Some unfortunate dungeons could only be cleared by completely destroying the crystal at the end, and the crystal possessed incredible defense. Fortunately, the Soul Station dungeon didn't require such a thing. Clear complete. The Soul Station dungeon has been cleared. The dungeon break of the Soul Station dungeon has been sealed. Senia, who had been streaming while semi-transparent, revealed herself. So Yoo-hyun's jaw dropped upon seeing her. My god. Her appearance was beyond anything he'd ever seen. It was like a noble angel had descended from the heavens. Even her expressionlessness was beautiful. It went past beauty into something more noble. She's Hee-youngnim's intermediate administrator? He almost drooled. How could she be so beautiful? Yoo-hyun found himself amazed by how Hyukjin could remain unmoved even while looking at such an incredible beauty. Just what in the world did this Hee-youngnim do in the past? Yoo-hyun was curious as to what Hee-youngnim's background could possibly be. I'm sure I'll slowly find out. He decided not to approach too abruptly. He already owed Hyukjin his life. Yoo-hyun resolved to repay his debt to that person slowly, very slowly, in his own way. Senia opened her mouth. I will proceed with the rewards. You being here to give the rewards must mean there's something special. Normally, when a dungeon was cleared, the dungeon itself would give the rewards. That was how it normally was. The fact an intermediate administrator personally appeared to deliver the reward meant they had used some item or authority. I think there'll be a level up point, as a fundamental reward. Senia nodded. Yes, I will distribute level up points to all members of the group that cleared the Soul Station dungeon. That was a very unsurprising reward, and all too ordinary compensation. What I want is... There was something else that Hyukjin wanted. His true goal for clearing this dungeon was something else. It was the first step in the starting line for his plan. She'll probably give me a choice. Hyukjin silently waited. No good came from being hasty. At last, Senia continued. For showing an astonishing play, a choice will be offered to player Kim Hyukjin. Chapter 25. Korean Father, 2. Sponsored content. A choice will be offered to player Kim Hyukjin. I already knew what the Soul Station dungeon's first clear reward was. Number 1 is gold. Actual wealth would be given. I even knew exactly how much it was in grams. It was a regular exam question. 3.75 kilograms. In grams, that was a whopping 3,750. I knew why it was that number, too. That number was necessary in story dungeons that progressed the story, not just one-time dungeons. It would be used later. But right now, it's meaningless to me. Of course, it was true that my heart was racing. Nearly 4 kilograms of gold had a value of 200 million won, or approximately $200,000. As was befitting of a number related to a later scenario, Senia personally read out the number. You can acquire a pouch filled with 3.75 kilograms of gold. A hologram appeared before my eyes. It was visible only to me. I was given a choice, to take the gold or not. An ordinary person would probably choose the gold without looking back. 200 million won. It was a quantity I'd never had in my life. No, never even seen. On the TV or the internet, everyone and their mother was a wealthy person with millions and owned buildings worth hundreds of millions. But me? Much less millions. I didn't even have a few thousand. For me, even a few dollars was money I was loath to part with. But where this gold came from is uncertain. The system hadn't properly taken root in society yet. If someone came out with a lump of gold of uncertain origin they picked up somewhere, it would be difficult to properly prove its worth. It would already be a relief if it didn't get taken by the state. The Players Association would be established, and the big corporations would start dipping their feet into the player world with Sungshun at their lead. After that, related legislation would start to be enacted. In the early stages of playing, as unreasonable as it was, many players were forced to donate their rewards to the state, as taxes. What was it again? Goods that came from an unknown world are dangerous, so they will be confiscated, or something like that. The country seized the pouch, armed with such ridiculous nonsense and even justifying themselves by calling it taxes. It was complete hogwash according to the common sense of 10 years later, but that was how it was right now, during the early stage of playing. So the gold is a no-go. It was an attractive reward, but I suppressed my greed. And the other choice? The other choice is a recovery elixir. Another hologram appeared. Choose a reward. 1. Pouch of gold, 3.75 kilograms gold. 2. Recovery elixir. Sponsored content. Type A? Type B? Type C? It was exactly as I remembered. Originally, Seo Juwon was the person who got this dungeon's first reward, but he was no longer standing in this position. The future has changed. It had changed, but many things had also stayed the same. The rewards were the same. If that was the case, then my decision was also set. I choose the Type B recovery elixir. There is no knowing what kind of item the Type B recovery elixir is. If your luck is bad, it could be something truly useless. I do not recommend it at all. It was basically a gotcha. Any healing medication that fell within the recovery category could come out. Worst case, it could even be medication to treat athlete's foot or cold medicine. Will you change your choice? But I already knew what the Type B recovery elixir marked as was. Still choose Type B. The nameless observer is curious about your choice. The Lady of the Scales expresses doubt at your choice. The Whispering Devil finds your choice amusing. They had to be very curious. If I didn't know what Seo Juwon had done, if I didn't know the future, I wouldn't have chosen to gamble over the gold. As for my teammates, Yoo-hyun acquired iron gauntlets with agility +1, and Sunwog got a headband with constitution +2. They're pretty good. Beginner grade items with stats as effects were pretty effective, after all. In any case, the Soul Station dungeon was cleared. I had also definitely heard the notice saying so. The dungeon break of the Soul Station dungeon has been sealed. Now, the Soul Station dungeon was in no danger of breaking. That was a big relief. In the past, players were unable to stop the Soul Station dungeon from breaking. Dungeon breaks occurred 3 times, and as a result, thousands of casualties came about. Approximately 2,300 deaths and 800 seriously injured. The number of slightly injured people couldn't even be counted. I was actively changing the future I knew. I didn't know how long my knowledge would apply. If I were to allow things to continue the way I knew, I might have had to turn a blind eye to the dungeon break. However, if I did that, I wouldn't even be human. I wasn't some impressive hero or saint, but I thought it would be too cowardly not to stop a tragedy I could easily prevent. I had already experienced the cataclysm of April 27, 2028, in Jonggo. Countless people had died before my eyes. If I could prevent more deaths, it was only right to do so. I didn't have any grandiose goals or desires to be a hero. My goal for this life was simple. I wanted to live like a real person. Like a real person, with a little more happiness. In the tutorial field, I had to turn away from many people in order to live, and I wanted to live without doing that as much as humanly possible. A level up point has been used. Current level, 19. A notice came in at the same time as my level up. Leaving the Soul Station dungeon. Reaper scans. Translator, Lay. Proofreader, Ash. Join our Discord for updates on releases. https://discord.gg/maragmfhrb. So Yoo-hyun asked me for my number, which I simply gave. I'm happy I got Hee-youngnim's number. I had no idea why he was so happy about it, but whatever. We exchanged numbers. Great, Hee-youngnim, have a safe trip back. As a player, the most famous person was So Yoo-hyun. He would probably be the subject of the media's attention, and I told him to go along with it so that history would flow as close to the future I knew as possible. That way, I could make use of all the things I knew. I didn't exist in that future. But now, I did. I didn't know how or what this huge variable would change. Preventing the dungeon break was the right thing to do, but there was no need to change things beyond what was necessary. Plus, I still lacked the strength to protect myself. The great explorer, Jackson, said it like this. a hidden sword is more frightening than a visible one. Until I had the means to be able to prove myself beyond reasonable doubt, I would hide myself, at least from the media. There was one person I did have to prove my worth to. I walked in plain sight towards a certain building. The Sungshin headquarters. It was a massive 92-floor building in Gangnam. This was what Seo Ju-won had done in the past. He ran to the Sungshin headquarters and yelled, "I can treat the president." And as surprising as it was, Seo Ju-won was indeed able to meet the president of the Sungshin group. Though, well, I didn't know I would end up meeting that spoiled brat here. Ah, fuck, what the hell? What happened was this. I ended up getting into the same section of the revolving door with this kid. He looked like a middle school student. That appeared to greatly displease him. He blatantly blocked his nose with a silk handkerchief, as if not wanting to breathe in the same air as me. When we got into the headquarters building, he grabbed a man who happened to be passing by and impolitely flapped his mouth. They were quite a distance away from me, but I could still hear everything. "What's with that dirty guy? Who the hell comes here looking so piss poor? This is Sungshin's headquarters, damn it." He was wearing what appeared to be the uniform of a prestigious private elementary school, and it looked like silk. Even his uniform looked good and utterly exuded glamour. If I didn't have my Hermes handkerchief, I wouldn't have been able to breathe. Ah, that handkerchief was that Hermes or whatever brand name. I chuckled to myself, actually more dumbfounded than angry. Did that kid really have any idea what he was saying? Song Jinchul. This no-good ass of the Chaebol family was very famous. Goodness, so he was like that from a young age. He would later go on to cause small and big scandals alike due to alcohol and women. He was from the Chaebol third generation that was often said to be problematic. More specifically, he was the youngest grandson of a Chaebol family. What was it again? He kept pushing back the talent plates examination that could be done at 14, saying it was fine, and finally did it at 19, or something like that. I think I heard he had like 44 talent plates. When he finally had the exam done, it was about the time for his talent plates to close, but he still had a whole 44 plates. The world was truly unfair. Someone like me had no talent, and was someone who didn't have talent even though I desperately wanted it. Yet this guy had a whopping 44 talent plates even though he loudly protested, saying it was a pain. Song Jinchul spoke to the middle-aged man bowing and scraping in front of him. "Is he a janitor? Tell him to go around with something decent. Dude's so frickin' unfashionable it's disgusting. How can a person wear absolute cheap shit from top to bottom like that? It's so nasty to breathe the same air." He was definitely saying those words about me. To be fair, he wasn't wrong. I had neither expensive clothes nor shoes. I did my best to be cleanly dressed, but in the eyes of a Chaebol family's youngest grandson, it looked like I was wearing cheap shit. I figured that was just how it was. Compared to the future Song Jinchul, the current Song Jinchul simply seemed cute. The man bowed deeply. "Understood, young master. I will be sure to give him a firm warning. I deeply apologize for making you feel uncomfortable. We will be more careful going forward." "That's right, take care of these things better, here? I will be doubly sure to keep that in mind." In the meantime, I checked Jinchul's information once. Non-awakened. Name: Song Jinchul. Age: 14. State: calm, conceited, disdainful. Disposition: arrogant, destructive, selfish. Summary: self-proclaimed chosen one. Is a non-awakened. The state, disposition, summary only show the most representative and can change according to the situation. Because Eye of Perception's proficiency is not high enough, viewing more detailed information is impossible. As I thought, his name was Song Jinchul. Maybe because his grandpa was in the office, he was in a calm state. His disposition was arrogant and destructive, and his summary was set as self-proclaimed chosen one. He's the same age as Sunhwa. So to summarize the year 1 middle school student Song Jinchul, he was a self-proclaimed chosen one who was arrogant, destructive, and selfish, to boot. Let's not bother with him. What I had to pay attention to wasn't the young Jinchul. I did want to squash the sucker's nose in once if I had the chance one day, but it wasn't the kid I should be cursing, but the Chaebol second generation that had raised him to be that way. What kinds of things had this young 14-year-old seen and learned to be like that? This wasn't the kid's fault, but the fault of the adults. Jinchul went up in the elevator, and the middle-aged man who had been bowing to him walked towards me. "How may I help you?" "I can treat the president's illness." Seo Ju-won had apparently said the same thing. The man's face went hard upon hearing me. There have already been over 10 people who have come here claiming that. But no one managed to actually do it, right? After all, the president's illness was none other than male pattern baldness. The name of the Type B recovery elixir I picked was actually extremely effective hair growth solution. The president is a strict person. Can you take responsibility for your words, sir? He was totally looking at me like I was a scammer. There wasn't a trace of faith in his eyes. That was only natural. Over 10 people had already done something similar. Despite that, seeing as he was still taking me upstairs, the Sungshan president was apparently rather desperate. Allow me to guide you there. Please follow me. He turned briskly and walked away. His back, which had bent so severely toward Song Jinchul, didn't look very happy. State, doubtful, humiliated, persevering. I could see the wrinkly back of the middle-aged man's hand. There was a big wedding ring on his left hand. Summary. A Korean father. Of course this man didn't want to bow and scrape and hear curses from a mere 14-year-old fledgling, either. It was all in order to live as a father in Korea. That was why he endured this humiliation. It wasn't right, but everyone lived like that, as wretched as it was. Fight on. I got into the elevator with the man. I didn't know if the president had given the order to let me up, but I was taken directly to his office. Knock, knock. President, I have brought a guest. I went inside, coming face to face with the first-generation president of the Sungshan Group, Song Kyung. He started with nothing and turned Sungshan into the massive company it was now. He was a self-made businessman who established the #1 company in Korea. Later, he would play a leading role in the creation of the Players Association and become the first-generation Players Association chairman. Nice to meet you. I am Song Kyung. And when I saw him, I was greeted with a slightly unexpected situation. Huh? What? Sponsored content. Max Talent Player. Chapter 26, Flashgate, Underground Tunnel. Sponsored content. Many people described Song Ki-young as a scary person. Apparently, if this person was in front of you, you'd find yourself nervous and scared, or something like that. It was public knowledge that he had a strange ability to make people tense. I felt like I had an inkling as to why. Song Ki-young was a player, too. It was something no one had known. After all, President Song hadn't revealed it. Although he had awakened as a player, he didn't do any playing. Player. Name, Song Ki-young. Age, 68. Level, 11. Class. Guardian. Innate ability, charisma, pressure. State, hope, doubt, fatigue. Disposition, progressive, neutral. Summary. Magnanimous man of reasonable doubt. Doting grandparent class has not yet been selected. Guardian has not yet been selected. The state, disposition, summary only show the most representative and can change according to the situation. Because eye of perception's proficiency is not high enough, viewing more detailed information is impossible. Through eye of perception, I was able to discover something interesting. Charisma? Pressure? My current level was 19, and President Song's was 11. Perhaps because there was a big level difference between us, I could even see his innate abilities. He was only level 11. It was very curious that President Song had already awakened his innate ability, when we had just gotten through the tutorial and he hadn't even played. And he's even got 2. As expected, a dragon was a dragon. Sponsored content. This is the cure. I extended the Type B recovery elixir. I am a player. I believe you need no explanation on what a player is. I see. The man on the sofa fixed his piercing gaze on the Type B recovery elixir I presented. It should be possible to activate the item description. If the president has awakened as a player, that is. I am not a player. Right, not a player, right. In that case, I will explain the effects for you. The Type B recovery elixir was, by all accounts, a hair growth solution. It could make hair grow lushly on your head. Co Juwon used this to get 1 billion won, aka $1 million, from Song Ki-young. His summary said it all. Magnanimous man of reasonable doubt. This person was generous. If you gave him something he wanted, he would give an appropriate reward in full. Simply ingesting it will make your hair grow. How much growth? Certainly as much as you want. Song Ki-young glanced at me. Eye of perception detects an innate ability. The innate ability, charisma, is active. I could feel the president's intensity through eye of perception. My heart feels a bit itchy. I didn't feel scared or fearful like people described. Come to think of it, I think I heard your heart's supposed to feel electrifyingly tingly when you talked to Song Ki-young. He had an innate ability called charisma, but he was only level 11. I wasn't all that intimidated. I at least knew that this effect was the power of his innate ability. I do not tell lies, and I'm not so bold as to lie to the president of Sungshan. I looked straight into President Song's eyes. After a moment, he chuckled. It seems to me that your assertion that you are not bold is a lie. I feel like it has been a truly long time since I've seen someone be so confident in front of me. The way President Song looked at me changed a little. It was a minute change, but I could definitely feel it. What is it that you desire? He asked directly. I didn't intend on asking for pure cash. I would like one condo and a little money. A normal person might have yelled, "You must be nuts," but not Song Ki-young. A condo and money? Sponsored content. In a newly constructed apartment complex located near the digital media city. A condo costs about 900 million won. A condo, huh? Song Ki-young looked me straight in the eye. Eye of perception detects an innate ability. Detecting the innate ability, pressure. I received a notice from Eye of Perception. A sense of oppression pressed down on me, and it became a little difficult to breathe. I confirmed the true nature of the innate ability called pressure. It feels like I'm wearing a slightly thick face mask? It was exactly around that level. It's nothing much. To be honest, the effect was so light it was almost laughable. It made sense. I was nearly twice his level. I'm clear on the condo. How much money do you want? The condo's market price was around 900 million won, or around $900,000. Co Ju-won received 1 billion won, $1 million, in cash for this elixir. I didn't complicate things. I would like 100 million won. Song Ki-young continued to stare at me, almost as if probing my intent. It wasn't just a simple stare. He used his abilities as a player on me for a good 10 minutes. Still detecting the use of pressure. Time passed in silence. It seems you're not lying. Song Ki-young stood up. Very well, I will try believing you once. The president of Sungshin, who seemed unaware that pressure didn't affect me at all, continued with a warning. We'll write the contract immediately. But if your words are a lie, then you will have to pay the price for robbing me of an entire 40 minutes of my time. I nodded. I wasn't all that scared of his warning. I was already very accustomed to the new technology of the system. Feeling relaxed, I added something I almost forgot to say. I would like the world not to know of me. I don't want any attention. I chose a different path from Co Ju-won, who had decorated the newspaper headlines. Alright. That left just one more thing to say. One more thing. I left Sungshin's headquarters with a light heart. I thought I'd be super nervous, but I had swung through the meeting with far more leisure than expected. The past me probably wouldn't have even been able to meet the man's eyes, but Hyukjin the regressor was different. Now, the aura exuded by the Sungshin president wasn't anything much. The trade is complete. The name of the apartment I asked for was DMC Riverview Shi. Later, when the Korean Players Association sprang up in the vicinity, the value of this cream of the crop apartment would skyrocket. It would be the safest place in the country, an apartment building that would become a landmark in Korea. I didn't ask for this place just because of the price jump or the money. And if I need money in 3 years, I can sell it then. In 3 years, the Players Association would already be mostly established, and the DMC Riverview Shi condo would be a nest egg I could cash in at any time. I might not have gotten cash from the president, but this condo was basically the same as getting cash. I'll need 1 billion won in 3 years. My final bastion was prepared. I now had a property I could convert into cash at any time. Sponsored content. More than anything, our family no longer needed to squeeze together in a half-underground room. My older sister, who'd been getting up at the break of dawn to support me, could have her own room now. My mom's lifelong wish was to live in a real apartment once. I would finally be able to realize her wish. We'll have a home to call our own. We had been anxious that we might be kicked out of even that tiny half-subterranean room because of the possibility that every 2 years, the rent would increase, but now, that was a worry of the past. Because in my hand right now was the contract. The president of Sungshin had been truly amazed. I can't believe it. Is this the new technology? He was no longer bald. He was frozen in front of the mirror for a long time. He called up his secretary on the spot and had him find out about the DMC Riverview Shi. For the president of Sungshin, buying a single condo was no big deal. Of course, I agree to all of those contract conditions. Secretary Kim, come into the bathroom. Everything was handled with lightning speed. There happened to be an empty condo for sale, and Secretary Kim was able to purchase it right away. Ah, and about that child named Kang Sunhwa. If she wants it, assist in her adoption to a woman named Lee Soo-yeon. Ensure there are no setbacks. Like a true magnanimous person, President Song settled everything quickly. My mom kept saying she wanted Sunhwa to live with us, so I asked him to help in the adoption proceedings. For my mom, for Sunhwa, and for me. Going into dungeons later will be way easier if we're brother and sister, too. She was a genius among geniuses whose talent plates hadn't even fully opened yet. Keeping Sunhwa by my side had many pluses for me as well. More than anything, it was true that I wanted to protect her. I'm sure Sungshin has realized the potential of new technology now, too. I had to keep the general flow of the timeline the same. Due to Seo Juwon, Sungshin became very interested in the new technology. Under President Song's lead, Sungshin provided active support to players and unfurled business ventures related to players, all because President Song had the chance to experience the marvels of the new technology for himself. They'll move quickly now. It was the same as the past. Things had progressed like that in the past, too. In the same big events, I would do the best I could. Not long afterwards, I got a text. Digital dispatch. Korean Bank. 100 million won deposited. I could hardly believe it. In my hand, I held the condo ownership contract, and in my bank account was 100 million won, or $100,000. It was difficult to believe this was reality. It really didn't feel real. Still marveling, I walked quite a distance until I reached Hongjae-dong, a neighborhood in Seoul. I waited about 15 minutes in front of a certain building. Nuna, you're off work? The ultimate boss of Tsuneres, my older sister, stared at me up and down like she was looking at a ghost. What do you want? I just dropped by somewhere and was going home, and it coincided with you getting off work, so I wanted to go home with you. My sister didn't really respond. She acted as if I were a huge pain in the ass, turning around and walking to the bus stop, her attitude utterly frosty. State, good mood, relieved, happy. She'd probably want to die if she knew I was reading her mood, right? I inwardly grinned. What's with the relief? I guessed it was a residual emotion from the relief of my being alive, because I had been one of the few to come back alive from the cataclysm. Sponsored content. The bus is here. The two of us got on the bus, and eye of perception immediately picked up on the gazes of people. Actually, even before I had eye of perception, I had been keenly aware of people's looks. My sister was someone who could draw the eyes of everyone in the room despite not having a trace of makeup on her face. My sister and I didn't pay much attention to those gazes. Nuna, how about we move? Got a lot of money? Yeah, about 100 million won. You drunk? Wake up. I'm serious though? My sister clearly dismissed my words as pure nonsense. She didn't even bother responding and just stared fixedly out the window. I knew, of course, that my sister wanted to move. She wanted to move out of the house where cockroaches came skittering out with every thump. She just didn't show it. Like the brother and sister we were, we didn't talk. My sister just kept looking out the window, and so did I. It was totally fine even if we didn't talk. The silence wasn't awkward between us. She'd probably faint if she knew this paper in my hand is the new condo contract. And if she also found out there was 100 million won in my bank account? I felt happy just imagining her reaction. Nuna. What? I'll make it so we can move to a nice place. My sister continued to look out the window. Let's live in a good place from now on. I'll make it so you can also quit your job. You don't have to get something like leukemia in the future. You don't have to work at a factory because we have no money. Today, let's go with Mom and... I was about to propose going out to eat with the family, but at that moment, I found myself unable to continue. Huh? I saw something outside the window. A golden light was shimmering next to a roadside tree. It didn't look like the people passing by could see it. That was only natural. After all, they weren't players. That light could only be seen by players. A flashgate? The Seoul Station dungeon had just been cleared. Did a flashgate form in Hongjae-dong at this time before? I combed through my memories and had a very faint recollection of something. Yes, there was one. It wasn't considered important on the civil servant exam, simply and briefly described as a gate in the early stage that was cleared by the Sword Empress. The weak golden light shimmering next to the tree, and the woman standing in front of it. I knew her. Nuna, there's something urgent I have to do, so I'm getting off first. The strongest juggernaut of PvP, a player so strong you would have nothing to fear from if you were on the same side as her. The Slayer of Two Faces. I had found the Sword Empress Shin Yunseo, along with a very small flashgate. Chapter 27, Flashgate, Underground Tunnel, 2. Sponsored content. My sister also got off the bus with me. You're also getting off, Nuna? Yeah, might as well get some exercise. I'll walk. Got it. Nuna walked off, and I quickly strode off towards Shin Yunseo. She does look pretty young. The woman I was looking at now was very different from the Shin Yunseo during the peak of her activity, in 2028. Other than the fact that she had a cute and pretty appearance that would draw attention in any crowd, the 20-year-old Sword Empress didn't look all that special. A tennis skirt? She was dressed up pretty adorably, to the degree that I couldn't even imagine the Sword Empress of 2028 wearing such a thing. She was wearing a light yellow, short-sleeved t-shirt with a heart on it and a white tennis skirt, as well as an ivory reusable bag like any other university student. She's cute. We were the same age, but she looked 2 or 3 years younger than me. The Sword Empress who had taken the battlefield by storm in that famous Battle of the Maldives was not here. Player. Name, Shin Yunseo. Age, 20. Level, 19. Class. Guardian. Innate ability, single hit finisher. State, curious, fearful, having fun. Disposition, inquisitive, daring, positive. Summary. Pure, easily love-struck girl with 2 faces. Class has not yet been selected. Guardian has not yet been selected. The state, disposition, summary only show the most representative and can change according to the situation. Because Eye of Perception's proficiency is not high enough, viewing more detailed information is impossible. She's outstanding. She was already level 19 and even had an innate ability. As if anyone would accuse you of not being a top-class talent. Her speed of growth matched Fist King So Yoo-hyun's. There was no doubt, playing required talent. You couldn't stand at the top with effort alone. Even from the low-level period, there was already such a glaring difference between her and ordinary players. Her level was proof enough of that. Her summary's confusing. A pure, easily love-struck girl with 2 faces? I was a little confused because the word was hardly used in 2028, but I remembered the meaning. Basically, it was, a person who falls in love easily, or something like that. I heard Shin Yunseo's voice. Sponsored content. Is it okay to go in? She appeared to be contemplating whether to go in or not. It looked like she was talking to someone, so I assumed she was talking to an intermediate administrator. I couldn't see. This is a gate the Sword Empress cleared. Flash gates had similar traits to dungeons. If they weren't cleared in time, the gate would collapse, and monsters would come spilling out. Well, I'm sure it won't be that hard. I had already cleared the Soul Station dungeon. A gate was easier compared to a dungeon. That was the established theory, at least. The interior structure was comparatively simple, and the clear conditions weren't all that complicated. I took the initiative to start a conversation with her. Are you thinking about going inside? Hello. Shin Yunseo looked very lively. As she dipped in a bow to greet me, her hair swished. We'd only exchanged one greeting, but she gave me the feeling of being very outgoing. Do you know much about this thing? This is called a gate. If it isn't cleared in time, monsters will come out of it. I did hear that from the intermediate administrator, but, do you think it's really true? It was. Originally, the Soul Station dungeon also ended up breaking a few times. It simply didn't this time because I cleared it in one shot. But regardless, there would be breaks elsewhere. As time passes, gates will break out here and there. I couldn't cover all the gates and dungeons on my own. Shin Yunseo asked, what is your level? I shrugged. This was before the ranking board went up. Oh, right, that reminded me, I had to change my settings in advance before the ranking board went up. If I didn't, it would become possible to read my info. Settings. Opening the settings window. Info sharing off. Player info has been changed to private. For now, I was someone who hadn't existed in the past. Since I didn't know what kind of butterfly effects my presence would have, I changed my info settings to private. At least for now. 19, I said. Really? Shin Yunseo's eyes went round. Her diverse and ever-changing expressions, along with her blinking eyes, made her look like a bunny. The intermediate administrator said my level up speed is incredibly fast and she said I might be the fastest one. What's your level? I'm also 19. Wow, there's another person like me, huh? Awesome. She was praising herself without any sense of pretense, so I couldn't really dislike her for it. In any case, I'm planning on going in. Sponsored content. Will it be alright? This woman was not yet the Sword Empress, but an ordinary university student. You betcha. The past record said that Shin Yunseo cleared this gate on her own. It wouldn't be that hard. I think so, yes. Even a dungeon was cleared. But that was because the tutorial ender was there. Miss, even that amazing tutorial ender So Yoo-hyun would be no match for you in one-on-one. I almost wanted to tell her that. It felt weird to see Shin Yunseo the Sword Empress being all nervous about a gate in a beginner zone. We could go in as a party, then. Just then, Senia showed herself. It seemed she had gotten the news from Yunzio's streamer that I was playing. You're late. I had purposely waited a little. Since I was going to play anyway, I might as well get the eyes of the Guardians on me and get sponsorships, right? And we've got 2 streamers here, too. I could only see Senya, but the Sword Empress streamer was definitely here as well. Her streamer, Roa, was poised to be an extremely famous streamer. She was sponsored by many influential Guardians. In other words, it was possible I could catch the eye of a few of the Guardians who had supported the Sword Empress in the past. Whoa, Oppa, you speak down to your intermediate administrator? That's awesome. Excuse me, we're the same age, so why am I your Oppa? You're calling me Oppa without even asking my age, miss. I'm 20. Of course, I had the mentality of a 30-year-old uncle on the inside, but it didn't change the fact that right now, I was 20. Oh, really? I thought you were definitely older than me. She broke out into a big grin, giving me the smiling eyes that had condemned countless men to a fate as Sword Empress crushers. Seeing it in person made me think she really was worth crushing on. Looking at that radiant, sunny smile made the world seem so much brighter. At least, that was how she looked on the outside. Is that why she's got 2 faces? The normal Sword Empress versus the Sword Empress in battle. It was said that the 2 were completely different people. I didn't know since I'd never seen her fight, but looking at her summary, it seemed she really did have something like a dual personality. After finding out that we were the same age, Yunzio became a little more proactive. I'll send you a party invite. I also wanted to go in. Reaper scans. Translator, Lei. Proofreader, Ash. Join our Discord for updates on releases. https://discord.gg/maragmfhrb. Sponsored content. Kim Ah-young got off the bus. She went into a nearby convenience store, buying some chocolate and putting it in her bag. Huh. For a moment, she felt her vision dim. She reached out her hand on the spot. Because not far from her, her little brother who'd been talking to some woman was suddenly sucked into the tree by the roadside. Thud. She dropped her bag. No. She remembered. The Jongo of April 28, 2018. Her little brother miraculously came back from there alive, and afterwards, the world turned strange. Monsters appeared, as well as intermediate administrators who killed people. It seemed her little brother was getting sucked into some weird place again. Ah-young ran to the roadside, standing at the place where she had last seen him. Where did you go? Stop joking and come out, she pleaded. Her heart dropped and grew cold. He had suddenly disappeared again. For Kim Ah-young, who didn't know anything, this was a natural reaction. She felt her mind grow blank with panic. For that 1 week while her brother was missing, for those 7 days of the tutorial, she hadn't been able to swallow a single proper spoonful of rice. Where the hell did you go, you crazy bastard? Her back to the tree, Ah-young slumped to the ground, as if losing all strength. Her body felt completely limp. She mumbled in a daze, I'll kill you when you get back. She couldn't think. She just sat there. I won't give you any chocolate, damn it. You little bastard. She had just bought the chocolate her brother liked, planning to toss it onto his blanket. But now, she didn't want to give it to him anymore. She tried calling his phone a few times, but she only heard a message saying, your call cannot be connected. Please, please, let nothing happen. Ah-young cried while leaning on the tree. Time passed. Meanwhile, Kim Hyukjin, who possessed a transcendent level of sense for playing, but was otherwise not all too meticulous, went into the gate with Shin Yunzio. I think a gate is far simpler in structure than a dungeon, he said. He was talking to Yunzio, but at the same time, he was also saying it to the guardians who were watching. Yunzio smiled brightly. We're the same age, so how about dropping the formalities? Hyukjin turned to stare at her, and her earlobes became slightly red. She gave a faint laugh of embarrassment. Many people described her smile as a cheat-level smile, and Hyukjin was able to feel that with his own eyes. Hello? Regarding dropping the formalities, I'll consider it if we get out of here alive first. Yunzio's expression became a little stiff at that. Jongo had been a terrifying place for her as well. She was able to adapt quickly to playing thanks to her outstanding talent, but it wasn't like she had completely shed her fear from that time yet. She would need a little more time to completely adapt. It wasn't that she was lacking in any way, it was just that Kim Hyukjin was unique and strange. Meanwhile, Yunzio's intermediate administrator, Roa, sent a whisper to Senya. Excuse me, Ms. Senya. What's with that player? He said he was level 19. His info is set to private. It was currently the early stage of playing. The competition between streamers hadn't gone into full swing yet, but the veiled fight between the streamers to acquire quality content was well underway. Come now, don't be like that. Did you tell him in detail about the difference between a dungeon and gate, Miss Senia? Otherwise, he couldn't have realized the difference between them with a single look. A player of that level can't have that much intuition yet, right? Sponsored content. We're not allowed to get too involved in their playing. I haven't done anything that goes against the commandments, so please mind your own business. In fact, Senia was the more curious one here. How in the world did Kim Hyukjin know the difference between a gate and dungeon? She had never told him. It seemed Roa had gotten the whiff of something big. I'll stream that player, too. Well, I can stream whoever I want, but I'm just letting you know, to be ethical about it. You cannot. Why not? Senia stared at Roa. She was as expressionless as ever, but Roa was able to read confidence from Senia's face. A faint confidence within that expressionlessness. It came off looking like a sort of sense of superiority, and the fact that it was indeed superiority was proven by Senia's next words. Because player Kim Hyukjin has already signed an exclusive contract with me. Exclusive contract? Roa stared slack-jawed at Senia. An exclusive contract could only be made with 3 players total. You've already signed something like that? Seriously? Something you can only do 3 times? Roa was shocked. Senia had already used one of her 3 chances. Roa also got a whiff of something extraordinary from that player, but it was still too early to come to a hasty conclusion. There's a very high chance he could be an early bloomer, but you already used one? It's none of your business. Senia ended the conversation there. Anonymous Guardians are entering channel number 19,207 in great numbers. Several Guardians also jumped from Roa's channel to Senia's. That meant the Guardians also had an interest in player Kim Hyukjin. Meanwhile, Hyukjin continued to walk. The safe zone goes up to this green line. Yes sir, safe zone, roger that. Yunseo nodded, acting like an elementary school student learning something fun. Hyukjin walked past the green line. Leaving the safe zone. You have entered the Flash Gate, underground tunnel. This gate's name is Underground Tunnel. It didn't look that dangerous. I should check once. He glanced behind him. The door they had come in through was still there. Because it's not escape locked. If things got dangerous, they could still escape. The gate didn't seem to have a very high difficulty. This field called Underground Tunnel took the shape of a big clearing. Monsters are spawning. With that notice, various spots in the clearing began to shimmer. Huh? But something unexpected showed up. Those things come out here? Sponsored content. Chapter 28, Flashgate, Underground Tunnel, 3. Sponsored content. I was progressing well, way better than I thought. After all, I could feel that even the Sword Empress, the strongest in 1 versus 1 PvP, was weaker than me, at least right now. I was progressing well, but it was still true that I hadn't gotten out of the beginner level yet. You have to reach level 30 to stand at the real starting line. Real playing could be seen to start from level 40 and onward, at least according to the standards of the future. Leveling from 30 to 40 isn't easy. At level 30, there weren't that many monsters good for leveling, and fast level ups were difficult. From that point, leveling demanded continuous grinding. Lycanthropes that are on the high express side have way too low cost effectiveness. Unless there was something like a creek nearby, lycanthropes were difficult to kill. People with a lot of money actually just went around with fire trucks and hunted them, but even that wasn't all that effective. Lycanthropes were only level 25. They didn't merit such exaggerated tactics in the level 30s. But it's a different story if I have these guys. I saw the monsters in front of me. 3 of them were huddled together. They were huge rabbit-type monsters. Monster Rabbit 18 Latvian Laches. Monster Rabbit 20 Latvian Laches. The 2 male monster rabbits were level 18, and the female monster rabbit was level 20. Yunseo said to me, one of them is coming up as red. Is it like a boss monster? Her level was 19. It appeared she wasn't able to check the level of the level 20 female monster rabbit. They don't look all that strong, mumbled Yunseo to herself. She was right. They weren't very strong monsters. It didn't always apply, but normally, a monster's strength tended to be reflected to a certain degree in their appearance. Most rabbit-type monsters were weak. They might have become huge, but they were still confined to the constraints of the rabbit category. Might be different if they were demon realm rabbits. A bunny inhabiting a field set as a different dimension entirely might be different. But these guys were still rabbits, even if they had monster attached to their name. The problem is that they're really tough to catch. They had a habit of running away when they sensed danger. That was fine, but the problem was that they were so fast it was difficult to catch them. Because they fled through underground tunnels, unless you had an Earth attribute player, these monsters were practically impossible to catch. I looked closely at Shin Yunseo. Sponsored content. She cleared this gate on her own. That meant she had a method to catch these monsters. But I'm sure she just cleared it. Simply clearing this gate was meaningless. I had to catch as many of those monster rabbits as possible. They were monsters that were absolutely necessary for later playing, for level 30 to 40 playing. I never thought I'd end up meeting them here. I felt my mood go up, and I wasn't the only one feeling happy. How about it? Shall we try catching them? It looks fun. She seemed a little excited. Her cheeks had become ruddy, but her cuteness wasn't the only thing I noticed. So the Sword Empress was always this way, starting from the low levels. This, too, was the influence of talent. That she felt curiosity, not fear, towards a new monster. She might look cute, but there was surely an incredible battle instinct lurking within. The whole person changed as soon as there was a sword in her hand. Some people even gave her the nickname, Rakshasa, aka Demon. Sounds good to me, I said before giving an explanation. Rabbits usually have a tendency to run away when they're in danger. It would be best to kill them in one shot if possible. Do you think you can do it? For example, with your innate ability, single-hit finisher. Yunseo innocently thumped her chest. Of course, I even have a skill that kills in one blow. The two of us hunted the monster rabbits. Killing them in itself wasn't hard. The only attacks they had were kicking with their hind legs or biting with their fangs, so they weren't all that dangerous. Now. That instant, Yunseo's sword glowed blue. For a very brief moment, it looked like her body whooshed backwards. Swoosh! The whistle of air being sliced rang out. A straight trajectory of blue light was traced in the air. It's fast. Her movements were fast. For the briefest moment, Yunseo's body had shot backwards like a bullet, like her sword was almost a spear. That's the Sword Empress' innate ability, single-hit finisher. It was already astonishing that she'd already awakened an innate ability at level 19, but it was also surprising that she could use it so well. Sponsored content. You killed a monster rabbit. Express acquired. 26 coins acquired. One monster rabbit died, and the other two fled. I clicked the monster rabbit's body. There are no dropped items. It was a bit of a shame. Monster rabbits dropped lifesteal items, and at a very high rate. Lifestealer items were absolutely necessary in order to quickly get through the level 30 to 40 stretch that was called the first hellish hurdle. Ah, they all ran away. Shin Yunseo looked like she sincerely found it regretful. Here, I could feel it again. That this girl was really born to be a player, that she truly enjoyed this. That was why she was later given the grandiose nickname of Sword Empress. Reaper scans. Translator, Lei. Proofreader, Ash. Join our Discord for updates on releases. https://discord.gg/reapercomics. They'll respawn quickly, I'm sure. But, Mr. Hyukjin? Hyukjin? Ah, whatever. Let's just drop the formalities. Whatever. I'm just gonna be casual with you. We're like friend age. It's actually hella embarrassing to speak politely when we're the same age. She mumbled quickly to herself before simply deciding to drop the formalities. Did you always know about this place? Have you been here before? Hyukjin also naturally dropped the formalities. It wasn't all that important to him. It's my first time, though? That was the truth. It was just that he knew most of the strategies of the future. Really? It's your first time? Yunseo's eyes grew wide. It was hard to believe this woman and the woman who unleashed single-hit finisher on a monster rabbit just now was the same person. But how can you be so calm? To me, it looked like you already knew a lot about this place. Sponsored content. That's... The air began to shimmer again, right on cue. It saved me from talking, since monster rabbits appeared again. Let's keep catching these guys. Got it. Yunseo seemed to subconsciously trust me quite a lot. She followed my lead without protest. The two of us continued to hunt monster rabbits. You killed a monster rabbit. Express acquired. 25 coins acquired. After we hunted around 8 of them, an item dropped. Quality iron sword. An iron sword that has likely been made by a fairly high-level craftsman. It has excellent durability and attack power. Grade, normal. Attack power, 7 to 18. Durability, 300/300. Damn it, something like this was meaningless. It was pretty decent for a beginner item and even had a durability meter, but I didn't need something like this. But I pretended to be troubled. There was one item, but 2 people. You have it, I said, as if doing her a kindness. Really? Yeah, it looks like you're better at the sword than me. For a moment, Yunseo looked like she was wondering if it was really okay, but then she nodded. Got it, I'll take it with gratitude. In exchange, I'll definitely give you the next item that comes out. Sponsored content. She grinned, as if thinking she owed me one. That smile was certainly pretty. Yeah, I thought, you take that trash loot. I'll take the lifesteal item, thanks. Legolas ring. A ring made by refining a topaz that holds a mysterious power. Defense 1. Effect 2% attack damage HP absorption. It finally showed up. Yunseo didn't recognize this item's value. It's only 2%? It was indeed only 2%, but it was possible to equip a total of 10 rings, and it was even possible to strengthen them as long as you could satisfy the conditions. Yunseo, who didn't know that, looked apologetically at me. Feels like only I got a good item. We're gonna keep hunting monsters anyway, so it's fine. A long time passed. I didn't measure exactly how long, but at least 5 hours passed of doing the same thing. Apparently, the Guardians didn't find our playing very fun. The courageous Lion King is bored. The nameless observer has stopped observing. The Lady of the Scales finds the actions of the players odd. Normally, I would try to keep their interest up, but not right now. The frustration and repetition now would actually come back as intense gratification later. In that time, I acquired a whopping 8 Legolas rings. My heart thumped. The only issue was that Yunseo became a little uneasy. But isn't it taking too long? I feel like we've been doing the same thing for too long. We'll be able to get out of here, right? If I kept too tight of a lid on the information, Yunseo's unease would hit a peak. The two of us were a team. There was no need to put a damper on the team's morale. I've already found a way to go out. How? Her eyes grew round again. She looked up at me with such surprise that even her lips turned into an "oh." I really didn't understand how the gap between when she had her sword and didn't could be so big. I wasn't so sure about the easily love-struck part, but the two faces part was definitely right. Over there. Sponsored content. I pointed some distance away at a certain spot. It was dark. I don't see anything. A clear crystal has formed there. Like I expected, it wasn't a high difficulty gate. After killing a certain number of monster rabbits, a clear crystal would form. If that crystal was destroyed, the gate would be cleared, as simple as that. A clear crystal? We can get out if we destroy that. Aha, then you dragged it out on purpose, huh? That was the moment Yunseo seemed to have realized something. That in the beginner period, lifesteal items only dropped from these rabbits. Yunseo stared absent-mindedly at me. I could feel goodwill from her through eye of perception. And then, she said something I'd never even considered. Is it because you're interested in me? She said it cheekily, but why did her ears redden? She should decide whether she was going to be cheeky or embarrassed, and not mix the two of them. What kind of answer did she want to hear? I was saved by the clock when a notice came in. There are no more respawning monsters. I was a bit sorry to hear it, but I was still able to acquire 9 Legolas rings. Monsters will not respawn. The clear crystal will be forcefully destroyed. Flashgate, underground tunnel, has been cleared. When a gate closed once, it wouldn't open ever again. That was another trait that differentiated gates from dungeons, which remained in place. It had grown very dark outside. It looked like it was dawn. A lot of time has passed. At that moment, eye of perception picked up on two things. Huh? One was my sister's presence. My head whipped around, and I saw my sister, who was slumped on the ground with swollen eyes. I also felt another presence. Ah, fuck, what is it this time? Sponsored content. The next moment, the world changed. Sponsored content. Chapter 29. Duel with the Sword Empress. Sponsored content. Ah, fuck, what is it this time? I couldn't see my sister anymore. The view around me was similar. Empty cars, shops without any people, roadside tree my sister had been at. If the field's the same but there's no people, it can only be. I knew what this field was. A PvP zone. PvP meant, player versus player. And a PvP zone referred to a space where duels between players took place. The one who created this, is the Sword Empress streamer. The Guardians watching over the Sword Empress probably put the streamer up to it. And I knew who the Sword Empress Guardian was. The true master of the Heavenly Demonic Mountain. He was the true master, the true owner of the Heavenly Demonic Mountain. He was one of the few Guardians who revealed their identity of their own accord. The Sword Empress Guardian, Heavenly Demon, he, who revealed himself as the Lord of the Heavenly Demonic Cult, was famous as a guardian with an extremely belligerent disposition. A courage lover who likes flattery. However, he wasn't as reckless as the Lion King. One who enjoys personally meddling in the system. Of course, that also meant he had the strength to do so. A guardian that doesn't skimp on sponsorships to both players and streamers. There was no doubt that he was the one who interfered. I think he issued a quest to Yunseo to have a go at me. I finished evaluating the situation. Even in the worst case scenario, I won't die. I had already escaped death in the tutorial field, the cataclysm of Jongo. Compared to there, a PvP zone was basically heaven. It would still hurt if you were hit and you'd still bleed if you were pierced, but even in the worst situation, you wouldn't die. This place was a completely different dimension. A special field where you revive, even if you die. Roa, Yunzeo's streamer, who would make it big as a streamer in the future, appeared before us. At the request of the Guardians, specifically the true master of the heavenly demonic mountain, a PvP zone has been opened. At a glance, her image was similar to Shin Yunseo. She was just 150 centimeters. She was extremely short, but her race called her a giant, or something like that. Roa was from the pixie race, and there were 4 pairs of transparent wings on her back. Whenever her wings fluttered, sparkly powder fell to the ground. Roa was very different from Senia. She knew how to make use of the situation. She energetically streamed the field to the Guardians. A genius who has caught the eye of the true master of the heavenly demonic mountain, versus a player of unknown identity who has a strangely outstanding amount of knowledge and intuition. How will a battle between them go? I chuckled. On the contrary, Senia, the streamer who had made an exclusive contract with me, was absolutely silent, even though such stoicism would make her really unpopular. But actually, I preferred this kind of streamer, one who lacked both talent and skill. Because she has no choice but to need me. Yunseo looked at me. Sorry, I got a quest, so. But I'm told you won't die, even if you get stabbed. Don't worry. I know, this is a PvP zone, after all. You know this, too? This is my first time seeing it. I just didn't think a PvP zone would be opened when the Guardian selections haven't even happened. Guardian selections? What's that? There's something like that. Guardians, you heard that, right? I know about the Guardian selections, guys. The Lady of the Scales expresses her surprise. The Whispering Devil is unable to repress his astonishment. The Courageous Lion King snorts. Sponsored content. The Nameless Observer is silent. Yunseo pulled out the sword I conceded to her earlier and raised it. But Hyukjin, you let me have this sword earlier, right? I did. You gave it to me, saying you thought I was better at the sword than you. I did, and those words weren't wrong. The moment I finished figuring out the situation, I had been thinking non-stop about how I should face the Sword Empress. Yunseo was good at the sword, even now, when she was just a beginner. At the very least, if you just looked at our techniques for handling the sword, Yunseo was several steps ahead of me. That was my honest judgment. But personally, I think you're no slouch yourself. How could that be the case? To begin with, the tutorial field was the first place where I ever picked up a sword. How to say it? You don't feel like someone who's learned the sword. This is just my feeling, but it was kind of like seeing a genius. You're swinging by instinct without having formally learned, but you're pretty much a technique genius. That so? I was realizing that myself, but hearing it from the Sword Empress lips gave me a weird feeling. I also took out my iron sword. Then, I opened my status window. Ever since level 18, I had been steadily piling up my stat points. Status window. Name, Kim Hyukjin, player. Level, 24. Title, First Pioneer, Excellent Player. Innate ability, Eye of Perception, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Strength, 17. Intelligence, 17. Agility, 23. Perception, 17. Constitution, 17. Willpower, 17, plus 30. Bonus stats, 18. Random stats, 13. Undistributed stats, 31. I was level 24. A relevant fact I should mention was that I had 3 unused random stats when I was level 18. From level 18 to 24, over the course of 6 level ups, I got a whopping 10 random stats. From my knowledge, that was an absolutely unprecedented random stat acquisition rate. Even if I'm an early blooming genius. In any case, I'm a genius. That was an undeniable fact. Numbers didn't lie. Shin Yunzeo's level was also a number. Just looking at the numbers, the level difference between us was 5. And earlier, I had seen her playing firsthand. If I want to draw out a perfect picture, It'd be best to invest generously. Strength +5. Intelligence +5. Sponsored content. Agility +5. Perception +5. Constitution +5. I boldly invested 25 stats in one go. My performance would be very different from before. Strength, 22. Intelligence, 22. Agility, 28. Perception, 22. Constitution, 22. Willpower, 17, +30. Bonus stats, 0. Random stats, 6. Undistributed stats, 6. Yunseo is fast. It might be that I had to raise my agility more in order to beat Yunseo. For now, I left 6 stats undistributed. Her fundamental techniques and skills are better. And my physical stats were better. Guess this is a fight between a woman with good techniques and a man with good physical parameters. The fun thing was that I wasn't that scared of PvPing with Yunseo. There was definitely the chance I could lose, but on the flip side, I also felt like I could win. While this PvP process was underway, it would be best if I took every action available to me. True Master of the Heavenly Demonic Mountain. It appears the Noble Guardian is one who encourages betrayal, without any sort of justification, seeing as you have issued a quest to have an ally betray the person they had fought with, the person they had entrusted their back to. Before the battle started, Roa approached me. She had picked up the smell of content. Did you just mention the True Master of the Heavenly Demonic Mountain by name? How did you know? You said it, didn't you? That it was the True Master of the Heavenly Demonic Mountain. Aha. This pixie, who was considered a huge giant for their race, Roa, looked like her eyes were positively sparkling. The reason why she was dragging out the beginning of the battle was probably to see how the True Master of the Heavenly Demonic Mountain would react. If it's the True Master of the Heavenly Demonic Mountain I know. This guardian had freely asserted his identity as the Lord of the Million Heavenly Demonic Cult. He was a demon among demons who dominated the heavens with overwhelming strength as his foundation. A hero who pursued simple strength while disdaining injustice and cowardliness. A disposition that disdains betraying someone's trust. Still, he was on the rather simple side when it came to his fundamental disposition. So I'm sure he just got ahead of himself because of the fun in front of his nose. In any case, to them, our playing was merely an amusement, a game. It was difficult to really argue about faith or trust with them. However, the situation would change if you called out a being in the middle of this amusement by name. Even if it's only out of pride, they can't defy their own standards and rules. So, what will you do, O True Master of the Heavenly Demonic Mountain? To make this duel fair and even, he'll either strengthen me or weaken Yunseo. However, weakening Yunseo doesn't suit the True Master's disposition, so he'll strengthen me. Sponsored content. I fit all the puzzle pieces together. As far as they know, Yunseo and I are the same level. If our levels were the same, in order to have a fair and even duel, he would have to give me some sort of buff on the techniques side of things. The True Master of the Heavenly Demonic Mountain wishes to bestow on you a temporary skill. You have been given the temporary skill, Single Hit Finisher. The temporary skill can only be used within the PvP zone. I almost laughed in spite of myself. He really did it. I simply made a deduction based on the True Master of the Heavenly Demonic Mountain's disposition, but that deduction hit the bullseye. It was essentially like I had a strategy guide in my hand. Her Single Hit Finisher and my Single Hit Finisher, they're the same. I wasn't very scared of the battle with the Sword Empress Shin Yunseo, the woman who was called the Ruler of the Sword. It was a PvP zone where no one would die, anyway. Well, then, shall we have some fun? Reaper scans. Translator, Lay. Proofreader, Ash. Join our Discord for updates on releases. https://discord.gg/maragmfhrb. I won't hold back. Yunseo leveled her sword at Hyukjin. The moment she had her sword in her grip, the look in her eyes changed. The difference when she was holding her sword and when she wasn't was obvious. That was the trait that defined the Sword Empress, the martial spirit acknowledged by the heavenly demon who was the True Master of the Heavenly Demonic Mountain. A genius of PvP with a natural-born talent for the sword. That was Hyukjin's evaluation of Shin Yunseo. My whole body is tingling. He could feel it through eye of perception. Yunseo's aura was fierce. She was facing him with the intent to kill him. In other words, this feeling was bloodthirst. An intense energy seldom felt from a low-level player, not even at level 20. However, Hyukjin was not cowed by Yunseo's aura. His eye of perception was an innate ability with a base function of calm observer's eye, a catalyst that could maintain a cool head in any situation and allow him to take a step back to look at the situation objectively. Eye of perception was very helpful in allowing Hyukjin to maintain his composure. She's coming. Shin Yunseo slightly lowered her body. Every movement of her body, her aura, her flow, he saw all of it. Here, to the left. Hyukjin took one step back and swung his iron sword, defending to the left. At this moment, he didn't see anything else. Here, there were only Yunseo and him and Yunseo. Only the two of them existed. Clang! Sword clashed on sword. With a little less strength. There was no need to expose all his cards. In terms of physical stats, Hyukjin was head and shoulders ahead. However, he didn't show that. To Yunseo, the two of them were equally matched in strength. Her attack flowed organically, almost like a living snake. The trajectory is going for my side. Sponsored content. But he had already seen through her with eye of perception. But her real target is my throat. That blade seemingly coming for his side would instantly switch its trajectory and aim for his throat. He read that naturally, with ease. This was, by all accounts, the influence of combat sense. It was a sense for instinctively reading the opponent's movements. Even so, there was no gap in Shin Yunseo's attacks. I can't see a way to counterattack. In that brief moment, Hyukjin jumped backwards, almost like he was pulled by a magnet. It was a fluid, natural movement that widened the distance to a point where sword and sword could no longer touch. Yunseo asked, "You haven't learned swordsmanship, have you?" To Yunseo, it felt like their physical abilities were equally matched. However, her sword technique was far superior. If so, she should be overwhelming him. That was how it should be, but she hadn't been able to land a single real blow. To make such a result, it must be. It could only be explained by one thing. The difference in sense. Or the difference in their talent. Yunseo judged that this result could only be categorized as those two things. I'll be getting serious now, too. You weren't serious before? To be honest, I was feeling a bit apologetic. It might be a PvP zone, but it still hurts and is scary to get stabbed. Such an expression probably didn't suit the situation, but Yunseo smiled brightly. Her eyes narrowed. At least right now, Yunseo saw Kim Hyukjin as her rival. At least in this moment, he was an opponent she wanted to overcome without fail. She recognized that. Hyukjin adjusted his sword position. How in the world can a fierceness like that come from an appearance like that? He still had a hard time believing that such an aura could come from such a cute and adorable appearance. Hyukjin found himself relaxing a little more. Now, I've got the advantage. It seemed she had judged that their physical abilities were similar, and she would come in with an attack befitting that evaluation. Hyukjin's prediction was right on the mark. Clang, clang, clang. Their swords clashed. The distance between their swords widened and decreased as they fought a battle that could hardly be called a battle between regular people. Although there were no flashy skills, martial arts, or foot techniques, it was, without a doubt, a battle of a level that was a rare sight in the beginner stage. Both Hyukjin and Yunseo panted raggedly. Neither of them had been able to land a lethal hit. Hyukjin had been slashed twice in the sides, Yunseo twice in her left arm. Neither of them had injuries that would impede fighting. As the battle continued, Yunseo had a feeling. It's my victory. At this very moment, her desire to win was set ablaze. She did not want to lose. She wanted to win. The driving force that had resulted in her growth into the Sword Empress, her desire to win, was endlessly spurring her on. Her eyes fixed themselves on Hyukjin's throat. Now. She grasped a chance that wouldn't come again, an opening. Using the innate ability, single-hit finisher. She had moved non-stop and had struck with her sword all this time for this one opening. For this moment, she had saved single-hit finisher. She could see an opening, and she aimed precisely for it. Her experience so far told her. This fight was her win. Huh. But just then, a situation so very different from Yunseo's expectations occurred. A situation so very different from her expectations, but was exactly in line with the picture Hyukjin had drawn. Max Talent Player. Chapter 30. Duel with the Sword Empress, 2. Sponsored content. Hyukjin had been painting a picture the entire time. In this fight of sword versus sword, where the odds were stacked against him, he made it this far by making up for his relative lack of technical ability with his advantage in physical stats. He held back, leaving the slightest amount of give. Now. Exactly at that moment, he moved faster than Shin Yunseo. He lowered his body and charged forward as if going for a tackle, like he was using a wrestling move on her. From Yunseo's point of view, it looked like Hyukjin suddenly disappeared from sight. Fast. His movements were completely different from before, far faster. There was only one explanation for this. He was hiding his strength? She was doing her utmost, but Hyukjin apparently hadn't been as transparent. It seemed that he had been saving his strength, waiting for this moment. He got me. Yunseo was unable to redirect her sword. Single hit finisher, an innate ability bearing the meaning of killing the opponent without fail in one attack. It was a high-speed attack that pierced one spot with incisiveness and alacrity. But her attack did not land. Her sword, which had struck forward, aiming for Hyukjin's throat, ended up embedding itself in the roadside tree. That was exactly what Hyukjin wanted. Though theirs was a battle of sword versus sword, Hyukjin knew how to use the objects in his surroundings to his advantage. While fighting Yunseo, he had been inching closer and closer to the tree, all in order to paint this picture, in order to have a fight that wasn't a duel. Single hit finisher is fast. It was fast and precise. As long as the opponent moved within the predicted range, the skill could pierce the designated target with precision. It also has high killing power. It meant that you had to attack with a great deal of weight behind the blow. So when it fails, the risk is as high as its speed and strength. When it hit the mark, it would likely be a fatal blow, but if it failed to hit, it left a large margin for getting counterattacked. As fast and large as the movement was, it would take time to regain balance. In a case like this, with Yunseo using the skill only to have it end with her sword lodged in a tree, she was completely vulnerable to a counterattack. Hyukjin's eyes clearly saw a spot. He pinpointed a gap in the defenses of the future Sword Empress, Shin Yunseo. Now it's my turn. Single hit finisher. A high-speed attack and the innate ability the Heavenly Demon who was the true master of the Heavenly Demonic Mountain had allowed him to temporarily use. Using the temporary skill single hit finisher. The target was one hair in front of Yunseo's throat. Kya, mommy. This woman might have the qualities to become the Sword Empress, but as of now, she still didn't have much real battle experience. Yunseo fell backwards onto her butt. Hyukjin grinned. It's my win, right? Yunseo reddened. She was embarrassed by the way she'd whined when she was unable to dislodge her sword from the tree, and also embarrassed by the way she'd fallen onto her butt just now. Yeah. Yunseo knew as well as he did. If Hyukjin had truly struck her with the blade, she would have died, no two ways around it. It might be fine to die since it was a PvP zone, but no human could truly be free from a fear of death. Sponsored content. I lost. Player Shin Yunseo has acknowledged defeat. You have won a victory in the first PvP zone, the first PvP battle. Man, if our Mrs. Han Myunghye had seen me just now, she would have been shocked, huh? I haven't called for my mommy since elementary school, Yunseo mumbled to herself in embarrassment. Hyukjin didn't hear her muttering. He tilted his head. The first PvP zone, first PvP battle? Was there always a notice like this? No, there wasn't. April 28, 2028. The notepad that had always been in his hand had been placed carefully in his inventory. Whenever he had the time, he carefully looked through the notepad and organized the events of the future, making a new strategy guide. But in his notes, there was nothing related to the first victory of the first PvP zone. Hyukjin helped Yunseo to her feet. There's a high chance it was originally Yunseo who had the first victory. He came to that conclusion quickly. The Sword Empress had never been defeated by anyone other than Jo Sung-hyun the Typhoon in a 1 vs 1 PvP. She most likely received some kind of special bonus from the first PvP battle. And she kept it a secret from the world. The title, First Adversary, is being generated. Thanks, but man, you're really strong. You haven't formally learned the sword either, right? How can someone who hasn't learned be like this? And you hid your strength in the middle on purpose, right? Your last movement was completely different. I feel like you got a real one over on me. Yunseo's mumbling didn't reach Hyukjin's ears. Another title? He got yet another title, something even rankers would seldom get. First Adversary. This was probably the title the Sword Empress was supposed to have gotten. First Adversary. A title given to the player who won in the first battle between players. The adversary holds a considerably advantageous high ground in battles with players. Attack speed, plus 7%. Movement speed, plus 4%. Special skill, can use Flash Step. Hyukjin was sure of it. Flash Step, of all things, had appeared. It was a skill of an entirely different nature from other instantaneous movement magic-based spells like Blink or Warp. With absolutely zero use or flow of mana, it could allow you to change positions instantly, before your opponent could even notice what was happening. This formidable lightness technique, that had allowed the Sword Empress to shine radiantly in 1 vs 1 PvP, this skill called Flash Step, was relegated to Hyukjin. Sponsored content. A skill the Sword Empress should have originally gotten. He saw Yunseo, who had already shaken off all her embarrassment and had a faint smile on her lips. Looking at that nearly completely innocent smile, his emotions were a little complicated. Instead. Thanks to his knowledge of the future, he ended up getting an ability that the Sword Empress was supposed to get. I'm not sorry. He wasn't completely at ease, but that didn't mean he was extremely troubled, either. The Sword Empress was doing her best, and likewise, he, Kim Hyukjin, was doing his best to play, using everything within his capacity. They had both done their best, so they would each take responsibility for the result. It was a simple, clear-cut principle. Hyukjin's victory also surprised the Guardians. The nameless observer expresses their surprise. The nameless observer has sent you a coin sponsorship. Plus 400 coins. The nameless observer sent me yet another sponsorship. The Lady of the Scales is awed by your chivalrous spirit. By chivalrous spirit, she was likely referring to the fact that I didn't kill Yunseo. If you're awed, you should at least give some coins. I heard that she was so very generous to one of the 8 heroes representing Korea, Jo Sung-hyun the Typhoon, but to me, she only expressed her admiration without opening her purse. The Whispering Devil likes your scheming. The true master of the heavenly demonic mountain has begun to pay attention to you. It felt fun to Hyukjin. A whopping 4 guardians have begun to send messages to me. The number of guardians who could send messages to a single player was limited to 5. No one knew the exact details, but it was said that the guardians also competed amongst themselves in order to squeeze into those 5 slots. Getting into the first 4 slots also takes a huge amount of coins. Not every detail of the system was known. However, one thing they did know was that guardians also had to compete in order to send messages. In other words, even among the guardians who revealed their names, message-sending guardians were the real deal. Just one more, and all 5 slots will be filled. But the notices continued. The courageous Lion King ridicules your petty tricks. It was almost a little absurd, even. How much did he have to compete among the guardians in order to send that message? Thinking about it like that, it really was laughable. Even though there's no doubt that he doesn't like me. But even so, he was unable to take his eyes off Hyukjin. Despite falling slightly short compared to famous guardians like the Lady of the Scales and the true master of the heavenly demonic mountain, seeing as he continued to persist in sending messages. Sponsored content. Is he a tsundere? His flip-flopping made me feel like there was some sort of love-hate relationship here. What are you thinking about so hard? Asked Yunseo, peering at Hyukjin. The PvP zone is supposed to be disabled after 3 minutes. Ah. Right, Yunseo was in front of him. He had been so focused on various things that he forgot about Yunseo. Hey. Yunseo's cheeks reddened a little. Hyukjin's eye of perception picked up on a strange emotion from her. What's going on? It was hard to describe in exact words, but this slightly itchy feeling of some sort, emotion of some sort, came sweeping towards him via eye of perception like a spring wind. Tell me your phone number. Why? Well, it'll be convenient to party up if I get to know a player of your level in advance. Ah, so what I mean by party is, you know, that thing. Not the kind of party where you drink, but that system-made party, that is. After rambling for a bit, she finally straightened. Just give me your number, okay? She decided to simply go for it. I've taken a liking to you, alright? She bit her lips a little, and as she looked up at Hyukjin with something like expectation in her eyes, her face appeared as pink as a peach. Her voice became a little smaller. Give me your number already. Reaper scans. Translator, Lay. Proofreader, Ash. Join our Discord for updates on releases. https://discord.gg/maragmfhrb. I was forced to experience a fierce beating. After the PvP zone dissipated, my eyes were greeted with the sight of my older sister and her swollen eyes. The beating she unleashed was pretty damn painful, even for an awakened person like me. Eye of perception sent me danger signals, but I didn't avoid her fists. Looks like she worried a lot. She had even called the police, but they told her there was no use, or something to that effect. This playing thing happening now was an incomprehensible and mysterious phenomenon. Not even the police could do a thing about the streamers, and they couldn't even keep up with all the calls related to gates or players. It was just too early in the game for that. The only thing Nuna could do was simply wait here. If I knew this would happen, I would have come after giving her a detailed explanation, at least. She had waited in a daze outside for nearly 7 hours. She only regained her composure after a long time. I told you to not worry. I won't die before letting my family live in comfort. Sponsored content. Inside the taxi, my sister absent-mindedly gazed out the window, almost as if saying, I never worried about a fool like you. When we were almost home, she pushed something towards me. Take it or leave it. I don't care. It was chocolate, the Ghana chocolates I liked. I picked it up. The feelings and sincerity of my sister, who worked 3 shifts in the factory to support me, growing sick with leukemia in the process, were in this pack of chocolates. That was how it felt to me. Nuna, I'll do my best. The debts of the past, I would repay them all. We had a house, as well as money. It'll take about 3 days to sort things out for moving. I guessed that our new nest would be ready for move-in in 3 days. Our current hole in the ground, a place that was hot in the summer and cold in the winter, a place where bugs came skittering away as soon as the lights went on. The day would come when we would be able to say this place was a memory, an experience. 1 day passed, and the media exploded with articles. Global conglomerate Sungshin expands into new technology business. Sungshin announced that they would be concentrating on playing. They named the items acquired from playing new technology, and revealed that they would devote their full energy into this new technology business. Not long after this announcement, tutorial fields appeared all over the world. I knew. Globally, at least 20 million people will die. This was something I could do nothing about. I was neither a hero nor a god. I could not save them. I wasn't even able to save the people right in front of me, the people on the D-Tower 2nd floor. This was a flow of events I could do nothing about. Sungshin's vigorous involvement, and the transition of the world into tutorial mode. The world was proceeding exactly as I knew. 1 day passed. I stumbled upon a mini-gate that formed near my house, where I found baby orcs. Their level was about 15. They weren't full-growns, but I still needed to face them seriously. Not too far in the future, I will have to kill orcs. And not just one, but a great number of them. Another day passed. Level increased. Current level, 25. 2 bonus stats acquired. 1 random stat acquired. Level 25. I reached level 25. This was the number one thing I'd been waiting for. Before a player reached the 30 to 40 stretch, the level up period from hell, level 25 was the first turning point of that player. I should be getting a notice now. I waited for the level 25 notice. Huh? But something was a little strange.